Chapter 471. In the Borui Club in the capital. In the ring, Lee Mushi, who was wearing a set of black kung fu, was launching a storm-like attack on her opponent. Front kick, whip kick, side kick, knee strike, straight punch, horizontal elbow. Her attacks were so intertwined that people couldn't even breathe. She was like a beautiful black female leopard, who was going to tear her prey to pieces on this small stage. There were a lot of people around the ring. They were all coaches and employees of the club. Everyone was cheering for Lee Mushi, which made her attacks more and more powerful. However, Lee Mushi's opponent was not weak. On the contrary, he was stronger. In the face of the former's fierce attacks, he dealt with them with ease. He dodged sideways, raised his arms to block, and raised his legs to protect himself. Although he retreated step by step, his defense was impeccable, so that Lee Mushi's strength was gradually exhausted in the repeated attacks. Bang! Lee Mushi's side spin kick was once again blocked by Lu Chen's arm. When she jumped down, her left leg, which supported her body, obviously bent down. She staggered and almost fell on the ring. She was exhausted. Lu Chen took 2 steps back and did not take the opportunity to fight back. He looked at Lee Mushi with a smile. Lee Mushi's chest rose and fell violently a few times. She stared at Lu Chen with shame and annoyance. Finally, she was discouraged and said, "I don't want to fight with you. It's boring to fight with you. You are so soft and weak." Lu Chen smiled and said nothing. Lee Mushi did not give up. "You are so busy now. You have to run to Hong Kong and the Mongolian prairie. How do you keep your kung fu?" Lee Mushi was really not convinced. Since she lost to Lu Chen in the ring half a year ago, she specially hired a master in kickboxing and spent a lot of time practicing hard. She was confident that her strength had improved a bit. So this time when she knew that Lu Chen had returned to the capital, she dragged Lu Chen to the Borui Club to fight again. Unexpectedly, this time, Lu Chen completely relied on blocking and parrying, which made her lose confidence. Lu Chen thought about it and said, "I'm very talented." The martial arts that Lu Chen mastered came from Mo Rant's memories, and he was very talented in this aspect. After more than a year of persistent training, it would not be a problem for him to reach Mo Rant's peak strength. Most importantly, Lu Chen liked the feeling of practicing martial arts very much. Practicing martial arts made him stronger and more energetic, and filled him with confidence and fighting spirit. Therefore, no matter how busy he was at work, Lu Chen would never forget to take time to maintain his condition. Lee Mushi was improving, but he didn't regress. Instead, he became stronger. Lee Mushi couldn't help but roll her eyes at Lu Chen's answer. She unwillingly licked her lips and hatefully said, "Don't be too proud. I'll definitely beat you next time." She had flaming red lips, pearly white teeth, and a fragrant tongue. There was a hint of wild danger in her beauty. That kind of unique charm made Lu Chen's heart beat faster. He smiled and cupped his fists at Lee Mushi, anytime. Under the ring, Wan Yong, the coach of the Borui Club, secretly gave Lu Chen a thumbs up. Lu Chen blinked and smiled. After leaving the ring, they went to the locker room to take a shower and change their clothes. The two sat down in the lounge by the window. The club's waiter served coffee and tea. Lee Mushi, who had dressed up again, seemed to be a different person. A light-colored office lady suit restored her usual elegance and beauty, without the slightest aggressive aura. But Lu Chen knew that she was just temporarily restraining her claws and teeth. "Lu Chen, do you have any good suggestions for the future development of our company?" Lee Mushi took a sip of coffee, put down the cup, and asked, "I invited you here this time to listen to your ideas. Now the company's expansion has encountered great resistance. Mukin Crowdfunding Network Company, Limited was officially established in September last year. The crowdfunding website was launched in the same month, and it obtained a commercial creative copyright protection certificate, enjoying a 1-year legal protection. As the founder of the crowdfunding website, Lu Chen has sold his equity in the crowdfunding website twice, and finally retained only 10% of the non-dilutable founder's shares, and basically withdrew from the operation of the crowdfunding website. Over the past year, as a new online business model, under the management of Li Mushi, relying on the resources and contacts of the Li family, the crowdfunding website has developed rapidly, the volume of business has risen steadily, and profits have been realized early. At present, there are hundreds of employees under Mukin crowdfunding, and at the same time, the number of online crowdfunding projects has exceeded 500 at most. The total amount of crowdfunding funds has reached an astonishing level. The profit model of the crowdfunding website is not complicated, and the website is quite simple. To be able to create such good results in a short period of time, commercial creativity is undoubtedly the key. And creativity is the easiest to imitate and learn. Many internet and financial tycoons have long been eyeing this attractive cake. Therefore, when the copyright protection of the crowdfunding website expired, more than a dozen similar websites were launched simultaneously in China, and the competition has become extremely fierce. In this way, Li Mushi was under a lot of pressure. It should be known that among her opponents, there were several giants with powerful strength, strong backgrounds, and abundant funds. Since they had their eyes on this piece, they would not be satisfied until they got a piece of meat. Although Li Mushi had expected such a situation, she did not expect the competitors to be so fierce. The market that originally belonged to her 100% was suddenly eroded by a lot. It would be a lie to say that she was not worried. Today, she pulled Lu Chen over and had a fight with Lu Chen first. In fact, she also took this opportunity to vent the negative emotions accumulated in her heart, and then sought guidance from Lu Chen. I know you must have a way. At present, of course, the market share of the crowdfunding website is still the first, and its market share has left the latecomers far behind. However, be prepared for danger in times of peace. Li Mushi has never thought of lying down and living on her old capital. She is also ready to put the crowdfunding website on the growth enterprise market. The crowdfunding website was founded by you. You don't want your painstaking efforts to be destroyed, do you? Don't forget, you are a shareholder of the crowdfunding website. Once it goes public, first with reason, then with emotion, and then with profit. In order to dig some information from Lu Chen, Li Mushi has put in a lot of effort. Lu Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He quickly said, "Okay, I know. I'll prepare the information for you in the next 2 days." Going back and looking through the memories in the dream world should provide a lot of useful information. Of course, whether the crowdfunding website can defeat many powerful competitors mainly depends on Li Mushi's own ability. Li Mushi was finally satisfied. That's more like it. She suddenly thought of something important. The team that you've trained in our club, are you going to put them to use? Lu Chen was stunned. Chapter 472. The Borui Club was an industry of the Li family in Beijing. Its original intention was to train and cultivate security talents. The club had a gym, a swimming pool, a fighting hall, an indoor shooting range, and so on. The facilities were complete and first class. Most of the coaches and staff in the club were retired from the army. In addition to meeting the needs of the Li family, the trained security guards also took on some tasks, so there were usually a lot of people staying in the club. Last year, Lu Chen was taken to the Borui Club by Li Mushi. The special environment and atmosphere here gave him an idea and he put it into practice. That was, Lu Chen recruited a team from the Borui Club and trained them according to his own intentions. This team was not used as bodyguards for Lu Chen. He didn't have such a big show and didn't need it. It was used to shoot a martial arts action film. The martial arts action film that Lu Chen wanted to shoot came from the memory of the dream world. In the dream world, there had been countless wonderful and classic martial arts and action films at home and abroad, which were treasures that made people's blood boil. Lu Chen's big IP plan was closely related to these memories, but he wanted to reproduce the classics in the dream world. In reality, there were no other conditions, but it was difficult to find suitable martial arts action film actors. In Lu Chen's own world, martial arts films had appeared in both Xinjiang and China, but it was like a flash in the pan, and did not cause much of a storm before disappearing. Now, what was popular were the mythical fantasy dramas with special effects flying everywhere. As for action films, the situation was better than martial arts films, but they also belonged to the ranks of niche films. In today's domestic and foreign film market, drama films adapted from popular novels, superhero films, and science fiction and magic films were the mainstream. The market share in this area was huge. A blockbuster could easily earn tens or even billions of yuan at the box office, so the competition was naturally extremely fierce. Basically, it was controlled by the giants in the industry. Therefore, if Lu Chen wanted to get a share of the film market, and he had to control his own destiny, he could only find another way. He chose to start in Hong Kong because he had chosen a suitable opportunity, and the training of people with the help of the Borui Club was a plan in advance. There were a total of 12 members in this team. The usual training expenses and salary were all borne by Lu Chen himself. After a year of preparation, it was about time for them to show their usefulness. It was Lu Chen's Lu family squad. Lu Chen didn't expect Li Mushi to bring it up. He asked curiously, "How did you know?" "Don't treat me like an idiot." Li Mushi glared at Lu Chen and said, "Although I don't know much about it, I know it's not fun for you to spend so much money on this team. Now that you've gone to Hong Kong to shoot a movie, they must go there to help, right?" Lu Chen was impressed. "That's right. My first movie in Hong Kong is about to start. They are indispensable." Li Mushi nodded. "Actually, everyone has already guessed it. If you don't say anything, they will become restless. No one from the army is willing to eat for free. Since you've given them a chance, then treat them well and don't let them down. They will also repay your hard work and loyalty." Li Mushi said the last few words very seriously. Lu Chen also became serious. "Don't worry, I won't let the people who follow me down." Lu Chen was not just talking nonsense. Since he experienced that strange dream and set foot on the road to the entertainment industry, those who trusted him and followed him had never been disappointed. The Lu family squad was built by Lu Chen at a great cost and effort. He definitely attached more importance to it than Li Mushi. "That's good," Li Mushi said with a smile, "I believe your promise. In fact, there are many people who want to follow you. Won Yong also wants to make a movie. He has asked me several times." Won Yong was the coach in charge of fighting in the Borui Club. He was 35 years old and had been in the army for 10 years. He once won the championship of the military martial arts competition, so he was deeply valued by Li Mushi. In the Borui Club, Won Yong was undoubtedly the backbone of the club. Li Mushi was willing to let him go, which inevitably surprised Lu Chen. "Are you willing to let him go?" Li Mushi said, "There is no reluctance. The main thing is that he has such an idea. When I asked him to come, I promised him that it would be up to him to leave or stay. Of course, I can't break my promise." Lu Chen pondered and said, "Well, I'll ask him again. It's naturally the best if he can help me." With Won Yong's strength and prestige in the club, it was undoubtedly the best choice for him to be responsible for training and managing the Lu family squad, which could also save Lu Chen countless troubles. In addition, Won Yong's skills and image were actually quite suitable for shooting martial arts films and action films. He could be the protagonist. But he was the villain. Thinking of this, Lu Chen couldn't help but smile. He just didn't know what Won Yong's expression would be when he understood his thoughts. Happy or depressed? Li Mushi was suspicious. Your smile is very evil. What bad things are you thinking about? Lu Chen coughed, got up and said, that's it. I'm going to find Brother Yong now. Li Mushi was unhappy. What's the hurry? Let's have dinner together tonight. Lu Chen regretted. I can't tonight. I have an appointment. How about I invite you to dinner tomorrow night? Li Mushi raised her eyebrows. With your sister. Lu Chen was very sorry. Oh, I remember that I have a dinner tomorrow night. I'll contact you another day. After that, Lu Chen quickly disappeared. This guy, looking at his figure leaving in a hurry, a faint smile appeared on Li Mushi's lips. In the fight club, Lu Chen found Wan Yong. When he told Wan Yong the reason for his visit, Wan Yong agreed without hesitation. Moreover, he seemed extremely happy. Lu Chen quickly said, don't be happy too early. I may need you to play the villain in my future movies. Are you willing? In fact, it didn't matter if Wan Yong was not willing. He could find another special actor to train. It was just that Wan Yong was undoubtedly the most suitable candidate that Lu Chen could find now. In this regard, Wan Yong only hesitated for a few seconds and replied decisively, no problem. I'll be the villain. Lu Chen couldn't help but be curious. Brother Yong, why do you want to make a movie with me? Ordinary people wanted to make movies for nothing more than to be famous, but Lu Chen felt that Wan Yong didn't seem like the kind of person who liked to be famous. Wan Yong was a little embarrassed, but he still explained, I heard that making movies is very profitable. I want to make more money. Wan Yong's salary in the Borui Club was not low, but he had already settled in Beijing. His biggest wish was to buy a big house in Beijing so that his family could live comfortably. However, everyone knew the housing prices in Beijing. Although Li Mushi valued Wan Yong very much, there was no reason to give him a house worth millions of yuan for free. Therefore, after knowing that Lu Chen was training a team to make movies, he had an idea. Lu Chen understood and said with a smile, I see. Then believe me, it won't take many years for you to buy a house you like in Beijing. This was the promise that Lu Chen gave him. Chapter 473. The dinner party in the evening was invited by Sister Li at the Regent Hotel in Beijing. She booked a small box, and the people she invited were Lu Chen and Lu Shi, while she brought her son Zhang Juanji. Compared with the last time they met, Zhang Juanji is obviously more mature and sensible. The entertainment industry is a very realistic place, and it is also very good for sharpening people. Although his debut time is very short, the young man has already shown the temperament of a star. As the captain of the Little Tiger Group, Zhang Juanji is now one of the most popular new artists in the circle. He and his other two partners made their debut in Singing China, and they won countless attention as soon as they appeared. The number of fans in the Waves blog has been rising, and he has become an idol in the hearts of many boys and girls. Most importantly, Zhang Juanji did not become famous overnight. When he played the role of young Yin Juanxi in Autumn in My Heart, he accumulated a lot of popularity, and with the help of the Little Tiger Group, he completed a gorgeous turn. A song, Butterflies Fly, tailor-made by Lu Chen for the Little Tiger Group, has now gained a high degree of popularity, especially in primary and secondary schools all over the country, and has become a daily radio track. The Bionics, MSN, and today's Little Tiger Group, Lu Chen really seems to have a magic that makes people succeed easily, so the nickname of Golden Hand, circulated in the circle, will spread to Hong Kong. Seeing Lu Chen, Zhang Juanji seemed very happy. He called him teacher and served tea and water, respectful and polite. Lu Chen said with a smile, you don't have to be so polite. It must be hard to participate in the talent competition, right? Shortly after the end of Beijing Television's 2016, Singing China, the Little Tiger Group stood out in the highly anticipated live singing talent competition and won the third place. Although they lost to two powerful opponents in the final, the performance of the three teenagers was remarkable, and they could be said to be glorious in defeat. Lu Chen also watched the live broadcast at that time. Zhang Juanji sat down and said, "Fortunately, it's not very hard. Mom has been with me all the time. She works the hardest." Lu Shi said, "Then you must be filial to your mother in the future." Zhang Juanji nodded, "I will, Sister Lu Shi." Sister Li looked at her handsome and obedient son, her eyes filled with pride and love. What she was most proud of was not the many years she had spent in the industry to establish her own business, nor the wealth and status she had today, but the fact that she had raised Zhang Juanji. For her son, Sister Li was undoubtedly willing to give up everything. This time, Sister Li invited Lu Chen and Lu Shi over. The first thing they talked about was the affairs of Qin Fei Charity Foundation. The Qin Fei Charity Foundation was established this year by Lu Chen and Qin Feier. The purpose of the foundation was to protect leukemia patients from poor families so that they could receive help and treatment. Since the foundation was launched more than half a year ago, hundreds of leukemia patients had been rescued, and Lu Chen and Qin Feier had won widespread social reputation. Up until now, the foundation was operating well, and the funds were all under effective supervision. As the chairman of the foundation, Sister Li's contributions could not go unnoticed. "I've decided to sell the majority of my shares in the agency," Sister Li said. "In the future, focus on managing the foundation and Juanji's affairs. I don't want to care about anything else." Lu Chen and Lu Shi were suddenly shocked. The Rainbow Agency, founded by Sister Li, was a veteran agency in the capital. There had been many popular stars under it. Although its status in the industry was not comparable to the top big shots, it could still be ranked among the top. This agency was also the culmination of her life's efforts. It had been maintained conscientiously for 20 years. It had a good relationship and credibility. Even competitors admired it. Now that Sister Li actually said that she wanted to sell the Rainbow Agency, how could Lu Chen and Lu Shi not be surprised? Lu Chen quickly said, "Sister Li, actually," Sister Li interrupted him with a smile, "you don't have to persuade me. In fact, I've been very tired these years. I've long wanted to let go and enjoy life. Now, being in charge of the charity foundation is the most suitable for me. I don't have to work so hard and I won't be idle and bored. Also, doing good deeds gives me a sense of accomplishment. As for money, I've already earned enough. No matter how much I have, it's just a number. Besides, I have Juanji." Lu Chen and Lu Shi looked at each other. Both of them could see that this time, Sister Li had really made up her mind. It was the result of careful consideration. Lu Chen said sincerely, "It's my luck to know Sister Li." Sister Li smiled embarrassedly, "What are you talking about?" "It's my luck to know you and Fei." Lu Shi smiled and said, "We're all very lucky." "Then let's have a toast." Cheers. Everyone raised their glasses together. The small private room was filled with a warm and beautiful atmosphere. Tap. Tap. At this time, someone knocked on the door of the private room. The next moment, the hotel waiter opened the door and a middle-aged man walked in. His gaze quickly swept around the private room. His gaze first stopped on Lu Chen, then he nodded and fixed on Sister Li. A warm smile appeared on his face. "I heard from my friend that you're also having dinner here tonight, so I came over to take a look. I'm not disturbing you, am I?" This middle-aged man was tall and slender. He had an elegant demeanor and was undoubtedly a very handsome man when he was young. Now that time had left its mark on his face, he didn't look old at all. Instead, he had a mature temperament. He spoke well and was very confident. A man like this would definitely be very popular with women. He would always be successful in the field of love. However, when he saw this person, Zhang Juanji's face immediately darkened. He turned his head and picked up some food with his chopsticks, stuffed it into his mouth, and chewed fiercely. Sister Lee was very surprised. She immediately stood up and said with a smile, "It's not a disturbance. Speaking of which, it's been a long time." She tugged at her son, "Juanji, you can't be so rude." Zhang Juanji reluctantly put down his chopsticks and stood up. Reluctantly, he greeted, "Dad." As he said that, his eyes drifted to the corner. This middle-aged man was Sister Lee's ex-husband and Zhang Juanji's biological father, Zhang Xiaoqiu. Zhang Xiaoqiu took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, "Juanji has grown up. I've watched the competition of Singing China. Your performance is so good. I think the champion should belong to you." He tried very hard to praise his son, but all he got was indifference and disregard. This made Zhang Xiaoqiu a little embarrassed and had to change the subject. "This is teacher Lu Qin, right?" Lu Qin said with a smile, "Hello, Mr. Zhang." Lu Qin didn't expect that he would see Qin Shimi, who is famous in the circle, here today. Chapter 474. Sister Lee's real name was Li Xinjin, a rather rustic name, and she was indeed from the countryside. Sister Lee was born in poverty. When she was a teenager, she came to Beijing from the countryside to make a living after graduating from junior high school. Like most Beijing drifters, she worked as a waitress in a restaurant, swept the streets, sold insurance, and distributed flyers. However, she was smarter and had a higher EQ than most Beijing drifters. She seized the opportunity to squeeze into the entertainment industry, starting from a small assistant, and finally successfully established the famous Rainbow Agency in the industry. Sister Lee's life story could be adapted into an inspirational TV series. However, she was most often mentioned by people in the industry, her marriage that lasted for 5 years. Sister Lee's ex-husband, Zhang Xiaoqiu, was a small artist who had debuted for several years, but never became popular. Although he was very handsome, his luck had always been very poor. He had acted in a few films, but all of them were small roles. He had also released albums, but they were a mess of losses. He never got the appreciation of Bowl. At a cocktail party, Zhang Xiaoqiu met Li Xinjin, who was working hard to develop her career, so he enthusiastically pursued Sister Lee. At that time, people in the industry, including Li Xinjin's friends, didn't think Zhang Xiaoqiu had an ulterior motive. They thought that the two of them had a big difference in appearance, and Zhang Xiaoqiu was younger than Sister Lee. However, Sister Lee accepted Zhang Xiaoqiu's pursuit. After half a year, the two of them got married, and the following year, Zhang Juanji was born. While managing her agency, Sister Lee did her best to support her husband's career. Zhang Xiaoqiu's path to stardom changed. He stood out in a TV series and became a hot star. After becoming famous, Zhang Xiaoqiu changed. He was not at home for many years, and there were many rumors about him. The marriage between the two lasted for a few years, and Zhang Xiaoqiu, who felt that he had grown up, asked for a divorce. Sister Lee readily agreed. Her only condition was the custody of her son. Later, when people talked about this matter, they all felt that it was unfair for Sister Lee, saying that Zhang Xiaoqiu was an ingrate. However, Sister Lee never said anything bad about her ex-husband on any occasion. Instead, she said a lot of good things about him. She thought that it was enough to have a very good memory of her life. Such tolerance and open-mindedness won Sister Lee the respect of many people, but it also made everyone despise Zhang Xiaoqiu even more. After the divorce, Zhang Xiaoqiu quickly married a young wife who used to be a model. A few years later, they divorced again. In the beginning, his career was very smooth. He received a lot of publicity and endorsements, and he made a lot of money. However, good times didn't last long. With the changes in the market, Zhang Xiaoqiu gradually became outdated. Especially in recent years, he had fallen to a D or D-list position. He still had some fame, but he could not compete with the currently popular Little Fresh Meats. His acting and singing skills could not compete with many rivals, so his position in the industry was awkward. Most importantly, even if Sisterly was very tolerant and never used her connections in the industry to suppress him, there were still many people who didn't like him. Never forget a friend from the poor, and never give a wife from the poor. This was a virtue that the Chinese had abided by for thousands of years. Even if it was out of time for the current entertainment industry, not many people would like an ungrateful person like Zhang Xiaoqiu. Lu Chen didn't like it either. He put on a fake smile. Hello, hello. Zhang Xiaoqiu was very thick-skinned. He smiled and extended his hand to Lu Chen. Nice to meet you. Lu Chen shook his hand lightly. Sisterly frowned and asked, "What else do you want?" Zhang Xiaoqiu was stunned. In his memory, his ex-wife was very obedient and gentle to him. Even after the divorce, she still took care of his face. Whenever they met again, she would be amiable and never fell out with him. Now, Sisterly was obviously dissatisfied with him, which made him feel very uncomfortable. After all, Zhang Xiaoqiu was not an ordinary person. He quickly suppressed the surprise in his heart and said with a smile, "It's nothing special. I just happened to run into you in Juanji." Listening to him, Sister Li's face softened a lot, as if she was recalling the good times of the past. She looked at Zhang Xiaoqiu and asked softly, "Xiaoqiu, today, Lu Chen and Lu Shi are here. In front of our son, I'm not afraid of being embarrassed. I just want to ask you, during the years when we were husband and wife, did you ever love me?" Zhang Xiaoqiu's face froze. He hesitated for a moment but still nodded and said, "Yes." Slap. A resounding slap landed on his face, causing him to be stunned. Sisterly withdrew her hand and said, "Liar. You." Zhang Xiaoqiu's face turned red. The great sense of humiliation made the veins on his forehead bulge. He impulsively raised his hand to fight back. However, a strong hand locked his wrist like an iron clamp, making him unable to move. It was Lu Chen who had hit him. Lu Chen said coldly, "Mr. Zhang, you are not welcome here." He swung his hand, and Zhang Xiaoqiu couldn't help but take 2 steps back, almost hitting the door. At this time, Zhang Xiaoqiu finally calmed down a little. He realized that he would be humiliated if he continued to stay, so he turned around and left in a very embarrassed manner. Sisterly let out a long sigh of relief and said to Lu Shi with a wry smile, "I'm sorry for making you laugh." Lu Shi shook her head and said, "Well done." She wasn't a fool. How could she not see that Zhang Xiaoqiu's visit was strange? Most likely, he had an ulterior motive. Moreover, this guy looked refined, but his words and actions always revealed a sense of performance. In other words, he was a hypocrite. There was no doubt that Sisterly had already seen through his true colors. Maybe she had been blinded by love, but now she had woken up. Kindness was not cowardice, and tolerance was not forbearance. This slap was good. As a woman, Lu Shi understood and supported Sisterly. Sisterly said to her son apologetically, "Juanji, I shouldn't have." Zhang Juanji directly interrupted her. "Mom, I think Sister Lu Shi is right." Sisterly nodded, opened her arms and gently held her son in her arms. Her eyes were filled with tears. On November 18, Lu Chen led the newly formed team, a total of 15 people, to Shangjiang. On the same day, The Smiling, the Proud Wanderer was released in Xinhua Publishing House in the capital. 1,000 hardcover editions and 2,000 paperback editions were all sold out on the first day. The printing plant of Shanghai Publishing House worked at full speed. The finished products were supplied to the local market in the capital, and they were continuously sent to all over the country. From the internet to the real world, The Smiling, the Proud Wanderer entered a larger and more suitable world. It was like a greenhorn swordsman who came to the real world. The sword rose waves. Chapter 475. At 2:00 in the afternoon of November 18, Lu Qin and his team arrived at Hong Kong International Airport. Just like the first time he came to Hong Kong, Lu Qin was very low-key. He didn't explain his schedule on his blog, and only a few people in the studio knew his whereabouts. However, what Lu Qin didn't expect was that as soon as he walked out of the passenger passage, more than a dozen reporters holding cameras and microphones suddenly rushed out of the crowd outside and surrounded him in an instant. "Mr. Lu Qin, can I interview you?" "Lu Qin, what's your relationship with Lu Gangxing, Lu Tianwang?" "Mr. Lu Qin, what do you think of Qin Yuanshan's evaluation of your music work?" "Mr. Lu Qin, some people say that you came to Hong Kong to make a movie to steal the opportunity of the same industry in Hong Kong. What's your opinion on this?" The flashlights flashed frequently, and the microphones tied with different media logos rushed to be in front of him. The surrounding passengers all cast curious or surprised gazes. There were also questions and questions that came at him like a storm. Lu Qin was a little confused for a moment. What was going on? When could he enjoy the treatment of a popular star in Hong Kong? This was a little unscientific. However, Lu Qin was not an ordinary person after all. In the face of a sudden unexpected situation, he could still maintain his calm. He quietly reached out to block the microphones that were about to touch his face and said, "Please make way, this is a public passage, thank you." And behind Lu Qin, there was a whole team of people. This team of people was brought back from the capital by Lu Qin. They were 10 men and 2 women, all very young, all of whom had just been discharged from the army. They were at the age of young and vigorous, and had received professional training. So when they saw that Lu Qin was surrounded, they quickly stepped forward and blocked the paparazzi at the first possible moment, creating a safe isolation zone for Lu Qin, allowing him to quickly escape from the awkward situation. The paparazzi did not expect Lu Qin to have so many guards around him. How could they be a match for these elites? The pressure that they had formed to force Lu Qin to abdicate collapsed in an instant, and a reporter fell to the ground in a sorry state. The airport security personnel arrived at the scene in time and stopped the paparazzi who were trying to pester her. Therefore, Lu Qin successfully escaped and sat in the commercial car waiting outside. There were many people returning to Hong Kong this time, so the studio arranged to hire a medium-sized bus. The person in charge of picking them up was Lu Qin's assistant in Hong Kong, Li Zhen. Li Zhen saw the chaotic scene just now. She said embarrassedly, "Young Master Lu, I'm really sorry. I didn't expect there to be so many paparazzi." Lu Qin waved his hand to indicate that he didn't mind. What he was puzzled about was why these paparazzi wanted to surround him. Also, what Qin Yuanshan? Snatching the opportunity of the same industry in Hong Kong. It was simply inexplicable. Li Zhen could explain these. It turned out that the source of the disturbance was the Cantonese song, "The Love of My Life," that he sang in Lan Kwai Fong last time. After this song was posted on the internet, it quickly became popular in Hong Kong and was liked by many young people in Hong Kong. There were even many local singers who imitated and sang it. Even the corresponding song appeared in KYV. Nowadays, Hong Kong's pop music scene was no longer as prosperous as it was in the 1980s and 1990s. Especially in recent years, there were fewer and fewer original Cantonese songs. The market was filled with a large number of cover songs and imitations of songs from Europe, America, Japan, and South Korea. The mentality of young singers was becoming more and more impetuous, and people who concentrated on making music were becoming rare. This phenomenon had many similarities with the mainland pop music scene. However, compared to the abundance of domestic talents, Hong Kong's original musicians had withered even more, and there were only a few rising stars. The market environment was bad, and the fans who really loved Cantonese songs were naturally very dissatisfied. On Hong Kong's music forums and blogs, nostalgic songs and criticism of the phenomenon were everywhere. So now that they suddenly heard such an outstanding work that could be called a classic, many fans and even people in the circle were surprised. It was completely reasonable for it to become popular quickly. But for Hong Kong's local musicians, it was a little embarrassing. Because Lu Chen, who wrote and sang this song, not only came from the mainland, but he was also not from Guangdong. Moreover, there were two people who made Lu Chen hate. One of them was the famous comment ID, 3 bowls of wine, in the pop music and film and TV talk section of Hong Kong's BBS. In the original video post of The Love of My Life, he ridiculed Hong Kong's local musicians and inevitably touched the fragile hearts of some Hong Kong people. The other was the famous Hong Kong blogger Madman of the South Sea. His blog post about The Love of My Life really pushed Lu Chen to the forefront of the storm. Lu Chen knew about this matter and specially wrote a blog post to respond to it. As a result, he won Lu Tianwang's praise. He thought the situation would calm down and return to the capital a few days later. However, the development of things was far beyond his expectations. The war caused by Madman of the South Sea did not completely extinguish. Instead, it spread more and more. Many people in the pop music scene were involved, and it became very popular on the internet. A few days ago, the famous columnist and music and film critic Qin Yuanchen published an article in the column of Harbor City Daily. He thought that Hong Kong's musicians did not need to belittle themselves. A Cantonese work by Lu Chen could not prove anything. The Love of My Life was also not a classic that deserved to be bragged about. Moreover, there were suspicions of deliberate hype and the existence of the internet. Harbor City Daily was one of the Chinese newspapers with the largest circulation in Hong Kong. Chen Yuanchen's article caused a lot of response and also added firewood to the debate on the internet. At this time, Lu Chen, who was not famous in Hong Kong, was really popular, and his past experience was quickly dug out by people, including the matter that he came to Hong Kong to shoot a movie. This inevitably touched the hearts of people in another circle, so there were rumors that people from the mainland used the support policy of the Hong Kong government to rob the opportunities of the local people, and called for the modification of the policy. Because of the preparation for A Chinese Ghost Story, the work in Hong Kong studio was very busy, and Li Zhen was no exception, so the information she knew was limited. That was all she knew. She said apologetically, "Young Master Lu, I'm really sorry. I should have reported these things to you earlier." Lu Chen finally understood the cause and effect. He couldn't help laughing. You don't want to farm just because you hear Lala's cry. We do our own things and don't need to pay too much attention to these things. His foundation was in China, and Hong Kong was just a platform for him to enter the film industry. It would be too stupid to get involved in gossip disputes, which involved energy and wasted time. And how could a sparrow know the ambition of a swan? Chapter 476. Compared to Lu Chen's indifference, Li Zhen was a lot more nervous. During the period when Lu Chen left Hong Kong and returned to Beijing, under the leadership of Qin Wenxiang, the studio cooperated with Jiayang Pictures to prepare for the shooting of A Chinese Ghost Story with Qianyang Pictures. Everyone was so busy, and she was no exception. Because of this, when there was a storm against Lu Chen on the internet, Li Zhen did not send the news back to Beijing immediately. It was also because of her negligence. She thought that this matter would be over soon. This was the norm in Hong Kong's entertainment circle. Unless someone pushed it hard, the media's focus would change very quickly. There were so many gossip news every day. Now that she thought about it, it was a serious matter, so she had to remind Lu Chen, this Qin Yuanchen is not an ordinary person. He didn't even give face to Lu Tianwang. He wrote an article to scold people. Lu Chen said with a smile, "If he is strong, let him be strong." Ah. Li Zhen was a little confused. Although she didn't quite understand, it sounded very powerful. Lu Chen smiled and said, it's nothing. Let's talk about it when we get back. A Chinese ghost story was about to start shooting. There were a lot of things to be done. Lu Chen didn't have the time and energy to quarrel with others. No matter how sharp Qin Yuanqin was, what could he do if he ignored him? Those paparazzi and entertainment media must be eager to see the world in chaos. They couldn't wait for Lu Chen and Qin Yuanqin to fight. Lu Chen was not a fool. How could he fall for such a trap? After returning to Hong Kong studio, Lu Chen didn't see Qin Wenxiang and Wan Shaoquan until evening. You've worked hard. Lu Chen had always been polite to the two important members who had worked hard and made great contributions. Qin Wenxiang shook his head and said, "It's my duty." Although his words were modest, there was still a hint of pride in his eyes. Of course, Qin Wenxiang had a reason to be proud. With his full support and the close cooperation between the studio and Jiayang Pictures, the production team of A Chinese Ghost Story was basically completed. The funds, staff, and venue were all in place, and they could start filming at any time. In this process, Qin Wenxiang could be said to have done all he could, running around cautiously. In particular, he did a lot of work and used a lot of connections to coordinate with the Lion Rock Film City. As the director of a film studio, Qin Wenxiang's efforts were impeccable. When Lu Chen was in Beijing, he kept in touch with Qin Wenxiang, so he knew the situation like the back of his hand. Wan Shaoquan agreed. Old Qin really had it hard. I learned a lot from following him around. He came to Hong Kong more or less to be banished, which was the result of his helpless choice. However, ever since he came into contact with the local circle of Xiangjiang, Wan Shaoquan realized that it was not a bad choice to come here. The movie market here was promising, and it was suitable for him to display his abilities again. Qin Wenxiang laughed and said, "Director Wan is joking with me again. This is all I can do. It's still up to you to film." The two had been partners for a period of time, and their relationship was quite good. Seeing such a scene, Lu Chen was completely relieved. In the evening, Lu Chen acted as the host and booked a big box in a nearby restaurant. He invited the new members of the studio who had just arrived in Hong Kong and the original team to a banquet, which could be regarded as a meeting between the new and the old. During the banquet, Lu Chen introduced Wan Yong and the others to Qin Wenxiang and Wan Shaoquan. "They are a martial arts stunt team signed by our studio. To the public, they are called the Lu Family Squad." Lu Chen explained in this way, simply using the banner of Lu Family Squad. In the Xiangjiang film and television industry, there were many martial arts masters who worked part-time as stunt actors. They had good basic skills and were also very hard-working. They often acted as stunt doubles for star actors to complete some dangerous actions and fight scenes. Low income and obscurity were the norm for these people. Qin Wenxiang was inevitably surprised that Lu Chen did not recruit in Hong Kong, but recruited such a young team from the capital, because the cost of such an approach was undoubtedly high. The price of hiring a stunt martial artist was not expensive, at least it was much cheaper and less troublesome than raising a group of people. Of course, Qin Wenxiang would not choose to spoil the mood at this time. He was polite to Wan Yong and the others. However, Qin Wenxiang's disapproval was still felt by Lu Chen. He could more or less guess Qin Wenxiang's thoughts, but now was not the time to explain. Lu Chen said, "Uncle Chang, I'll have to trouble you to handle their work visas and residence permits tomorrow." Mainlanders who wanted to work and live in the three major special zones of Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau needed to apply for the corresponding documents, otherwise there would be great trouble in life. Qin Wenxiang patted his chest and said, "No problem, leave it to me." Lu Chen was very relieved that he could handle it. He picked up his glass and made a toast to express his gratitude. After 3 rounds of drinking, everyone began to talk. Qin Wenxiang told Lu Chen a lot of recent things in the circle, and they talked about the controversy caused by Lu Chen on the internet. There was also Qin Yuanqin. Chen Yuanchen is one of the representatives of Hong Kong, Chen Wenxiang said. The characteristic of Hong Kong members is that they must put the interests of Hong Kong people first in everything, and reject foreign competition and immigrants. It is said that he intends to run for parliament next year. I suspect that it is very likely that he is using you as a target in this matter. The rumors on the internet are probably deliberately released by someone, so you can't take it lightly. Don't underestimate their incitement. Previously, Li Jin told Lu Qin that Chen Yuanchen was very sharp, but Lu Qin did not pay much attention to it. Now that Chen Wenxiang revealed the deep inside story to him, he had to pay attention to it. In many cases, even if you don't look for trouble, trouble will come to you. Ignoring and avoiding it is not a solution. Lu Qin thought for a moment and said, then find a chance to clarify it. I was almost blocked by reporters at the airport in the afternoon. He was still very puzzled. How did these reporters know his flight number? Chen Wenxiang said with a smile, these paparazzi have very good noses, and they have insiders in all the major airlines. They will know in advance when stars enter and leave the port. In the future, you'd better take the VIP passage. Lu Qin said that he had learned his lesson. This trick was very sophisticated. Chen Wenxiang continued, if you want to clarify the truth, then don't look for these paparazzi. They specialize in writing nonsense. It's better to be on TV programs. He said to Li Zhen, Zhen, pay attention to which TV stations will send invitations these days. Li Zhen nodded. Okay. As a result, Chen Wenxiang was right. On the second day after Lu Qin returned to Hong Kong, 3 TV stations sent invitations. Chapter 477. Xinjiang's land area was more than 1,000 square kilometers, with a population of more than 10 million, and its population density was among the highest in the world. This international metropolis was once known as the Hollywood of the East, and its entertainment industry was extremely developed. Although there were signs of decline since the beginning of the new century, it was still one of the important industries of Xinjiang. As the most important part of the entertainment media, Xinjiang had a considerable number of television stations, mainly including 2 major wireless stations and more than a dozen small and medium-sized cable stations. Among them, Xinjiang Satellite Television, Xinjiang Satellite TV, and Asia Television, ATV, were the 2 hegemons in the industry, jointly occupying more than 70% of the market share. Pearl TV, Hong Kong Cable TV, Kowloon TV and other cable TV stations divided up the remaining 30%. The competition between them was very fierce, creating the prosperity of Xinjiang's television media. The invitations to Lu Qin's studio were from ATV, Pearl TV and Hong Kong Cable TV. Without any consideration, Lu Qin accepted ATV's program invitation. Asia Television was the first television station in Xinjiang, and also the first Chinese television station in the world. It had a long history and a glorious past. Although its current strength and scale were slightly inferior to the rising star Xinjiang Satellite TV, ATV's background was still very strong, and it had a great influence in Xinjiang and even in Southeast Asia. ATV had 12 channels, and the program that invited Lu Qin was the variety channel's Entertainment 3 People Talk. This program had been on the air for more than 10 years. It was hosted by ATV's famous host, Shen Shuling. Every episode would invite a star in the entertainment industry and a special guest to interview the current entertainment hot topics. Its average ratings had always been in the top 3 among similar programs. The reason why Entertainment 3 People Talk invited Lu Qin was undoubtedly because of the dispute he had caused on Hong Kong's internet. It was about Xinjiang's pop music and Xinjiang's movies. Lu Qin still attached great importance to ATV's program invitation. After getting the program script, he took some time to study it and also looked through a lot of previous videos of Entertainment 3 People Talk. Assistant Li Zhen was very active in advising Lu Qin, and even recommended a famous stylist to him. Her excitement was not without reason. Lu Qin had only been in Xinjiang for a few days, but his name had already spread in Xinjiang's entertainment industry and even caused quite a stir. A song stirred up the entertainment industry and attracted the attention of ATV. As Lu Chen's assistant, Li Zhen felt honored. This was the famous ATV. Moreover, Li Zhen was a fan of ATV host Shen Shuling. Of course, she fervently hoped that Lu Chen would have a wonderful and outstanding performance on Three People in Entertainment. The program, Three People in Entertainment, was recorded in advance, so after receiving the program invitation, the studio communicated with ATV, and the official recording time was set for the afternoon of the 21st. On the same day, Lu Chen arrived at ATV's headquarters on time with his two assistants. The headquarters of ATV is also located in the Westport Business Center of Xiangpun. It is only a few hundred meters away from the Rongjin building where Lu Chen's studio is located, but the former is a building that has been built for 30 years. This 39-story light gray building was not eye-catching among the various modern and luxurious high-rise buildings around it. Even the structure and appearance looked outdated, but the words Asia Television and the logo inlaid on the outer wall shone brightly under the sunlight, proudly displaying its glory. Once upon a time, countless artists in Xinjiang were proud to walk into this building. At the entrance of the ATV building, Lu Chen first saw Shen Shuling's assistant who came to greet them. After completing the registration, the group took the elevator to the 27th floor, the studio of the ATV Variety Channel. Shen Shuling and another guest were already waiting there. Shen Shuling was in her 40s, but because she took good care of herself, she looked like a person in her 30s. Her appearance was not very beautiful, but she was dignified, generous, and graceful. Especially when she smiled, it gave people a feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze, giving people a good impression. "Hello, Lu Chen, welcome to ATV," she smiled and shook hands with Lu Chen, and said half-jokingly, "I'm your fan." A simple sentence instantly narrowed the distance between the two of them. Lu Chen smiled and said, "Then I'll give you a limited edition solo album. I only ask Sister Shen to take care of me in the program." Although Shen Shuling looked very amiable, her hosting style was quite sharp. Even in the face of a big star, she dared to ask sensitive questions. In fact, most of the hosts in Xinjiang were like this. Because Xinjiang's TV stations were all private, in order to pursue the effect of the program, the requirements for the host were naturally very high. When the audience watched variety shows, they liked content with gimmicks, conflicts, and strong topics. If the host did not have unique characteristics, it would be easy to be abandoned. The most important thing was that Xinjiang's policies and regulations were different from those in the mainland, so the standards for TV programs were different. Lu Chen had previously watched a lot of previous videos of Three People in Entertainment talk. Of course, he had some understanding of Shen Shuling's hosting personality, so although it was a joke, it was also serious. Shen Shuling was stunned at first, then smiled and said, "Okay, I will definitely take care of you." She introduced another guest to Lu Chen. Three People in Entertainment talk was, of course, a conversation between three people. As the first guest, Lu Chen was definitely the protagonist, but the existence of this guest was not dispensable. His views were undoubtedly an important part of the program. This guest was called Zhuang Dong. He was a writer, a critic, a reporter, and so on. He was a celebrity in the literary and entertainment circles. He had published many books and had more than 500,000 fans on Hong Kong blogs. Zhuang Dong was thin and a little tanned. He was wearing a suit and glasses. After the introduction, he shook hands with Lu Chen and said, "Hello, nice to meet you." Lu Chen smiled and said, "Hello, Mr. Zhuang." Zhuang Dong's eyes were quite sharp. He stared at Lu Chen and asked, "Mr. Lu, I want to ask, what is the main purpose of your development in Xinjiang? Or what is your goal?" Lu Chen was stunned. The program had not even started recording, and this person had already started to ask aggressive questions. He looked quite unfriendly. He thought for a moment and replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "I came to Xiangjiang to make friends." This answer was undoubtedly completely out of Zhuang Dong's expectation. Maybe he wanted to catch Lu Chen off guard, but he was dumbfounded by Lu Chen's response. Shen Shuling, who was standing on the side, had a flash of smile in her eyes. She tried to smooth things over and said, "You too, if you have anything to say, let's talk on the program." She had a feeling that today's episode of Three People in Entertainment Talk would be quite interesting. At least the guest was not wrong. Chapter 478. It was already 8:00 in the evening, when all the houses in Hong Kong were brightly lit. Kong nimbly jumped out of the minibus that had just stopped at the platform, rushed forward a few steps, jumped to the sidewalk, and then walked quickly to his home. Kong had just graduated from college this year. At present, he was working in a trading company, doing the import and export of digital equipment. He did not go to a famous university and had no energy for work, so now he was mainly learning to be an assistant. The work was very hard. He had to go to work at 6:00 in the morning and go home at 7 or 8 in the evening. The salary was very low, and he had to do all kinds of chores. It was very undignified to be ordered around by the boss. But Kong was a very optimistic boy. He worked very hard and studied very hard. He looked forward to the day when he could open a small company and buy a big house for his family. His dream was a villa. Kang's home was in Dawai, Sha Tin. A 50-square-meter house accommodated 3 generations of 6 people. The so-called HOS referred to the low-cost housing built by the Hong Kong government in the 1970s under the Home Ownership Plan, which was equivalent to the affordable housing in the mainland. The price was 30% to 40% lower than that of similar commercial housing. It was mainly sold to public housing tenants and qualified low- and middle-income residents. This 50-square-meter HOS was bought by Kang's grandparents with their life savings. After returning home, Kong opened the door with the key. His mother, who was cleaning in the kitchen, heard the noise and poked her head out. She asked, "Kong, have you had dinner?" Kong nodded and said, "Yes, I have. I'm going to my room." His mother looked at his back as he hurried into the room and shook her head. Although the house was very small, in order to meet the living needs of the family, it was still divided into 3 rooms, one for his grandparents, one for his parents, and one for him and his sister. There was no other way. Although Kong was already an adult and his sister was in high school, this HOS was very good compared with many families who lived in public housing or even cage houses. In the future, when his sister got married, he could marry a wife and live with her. Dreams were beautiful, but the real life had to go on. His sister was sitting at the desk copying homework. Kong did not disturb her. He sat on his bed and turned on the small LCD TV hanging on the wall. Kong bought the TV with his first salary so that he wouldn't have to fight with his family over the TV. He liked movies and TV dramas. He also liked pop music and surfing the internet. Now that the computer was occupied by his sister, Kong had no other choice but to watch TV. Most importantly, there were programs that he wanted to watch at night. Beep. Just as he turned on the TV with the remote control, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang twice. Kong took out his phone and looked at it. It was a message from Xiao Wei, asking if he had arrived home. Kong quickly replied, "I'm home. I just turned on the TV." Xiao Wei replied very quickly, "ATV Variety Channel, 8:30 p.m., Entertainment 3 People Talk." Kong couldn't help but smile. His fingers moved quickly. Understood. Xiao Wei was a girl he was pursuing. She was a clerk in another company. Although she was not very beautiful, she could be considered delicate and charming. She had no lack of pursuers. Kong knew that his family was ordinary and his conditions were ordinary. He didn't really expect to win her favor. However, by chance, Kong discovered a little secret of Xiao Wei, and then the two unexpectedly started dating. Although it was far from the level of boyfriend and girlfriend, it was enough to become a happy thing in Kang's life. Xiao Wei liked music and singing very much. She often went to Lan Kwai Fong Bar with her friends to listen to songs. Her common ID on the internet was Viviani. Isn't it a nice name? Xiao Wei recently fell in love with a young artist from the mainland, and tonight, the artist would appear on the ATV variety channel's Entertainment 3 People Talk program. Not only did she want to watch it herself, but she also wanted her friends to watch it together. Kong was no exception. He exchanged text messages with Xiao Wei. The long advertisement before the start of the program had no effect on Kong. Unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. Entertainment 3 People Talk started on time at 8:30 p.m. First, the familiar opening music and the familiar program logo were played. The camera quickly turned to the host. Kong was no stranger to the ATV variety channel's Entertainment 3 People Talk, especially the host, Shen Shuling. When he was still in primary school, she was already active on the screen and looked very kind. Welcome to Entertainment 3 People Talk. The dignified and beautiful Shen Shuling smiled at the camera, and the two guests sat on her left and right. Who is this? He's so handsome. Kong couldn't help but turn his head at the sudden sound. He saw his sister standing beside him, staring at the TV screen with glowing eyes. Kong knew who she was asking about and explained, Lu Qin, an artist from the mainland. He sings very well. Have you heard the song, The Love of My Life? He looked at Lu Qin on the screen. Although he was a little unhappy, he had to admit that Lu Qin was really handsome. There were many handsome young artists in Hong Kong, but this artist from the mainland had a special temperament. Kong couldn't tell, but he felt that he was different from other stars. Is this song sung by him? His sister suddenly understood and sat beside him to watch the program together. High school was very busy. If she wanted to go to a good university, she had to work hard. Kang's sister usually didn't have much time to play or watch TV or surf the internet, because her goal was to surpass her brother. But she had also heard the song, The Love of My Life. First of all, let's welcome Lu Qin. He comes from the mainland and is currently shooting a movie in Hong Kong. He is also shooting a movie. His sister's surprise made Kong even more unhappy. If he had known this, he would not have turned on the TV. But in this way, he and Xiao Wei would lose an important topic, and maybe they would be put into another book by the other party. The program continued. No one knew if it was specially arranged by the TV station. At the beginning of the program, another guest, Zhuang Dong, attacked Lu Qin and asked several sharp questions, mainly about the pop music of Hong Kong. His sister was indignant. Why is he like this? If he has the ability, he should write a good song. In the face of Zhuang Dong's attack, Lu Qin dealt with it calmly and confidently. Lu Qin praised the great contribution of Hong Kong pop music to the Chinese music world, and also pointed out the common problems faced by pop music at present. He hoped that more talented musicians could emerge in the music world and reproduce the glory of Chinese music together. The watertight answer made Zhuang Dong's attack in vain. Perhaps he realized that this problem was not difficult for Lu Qin, so he quickly changed the topic to Hong Kong movies and the film support policies of the Hong Kong government. Chapter 479. Before I invited you to this show, I noticed that there were a lot of rumors on the internet. Shen Shuling's pair of phoenix eyes stared at Lu Qin without blinking. Her voice was so pleasant from beginning to end, but the taste in her words was not necessarily gentle and harmless. Someone said on a blog that the new support policy issued by the Hong Kong government could bring back the glory of the Hong Kong film industry. But first of all, it has attracted the wolves, which will undoubtedly have an impact on the Hong Kong film industry and further intensify the fierce competition. He suggested that the Hong Kong government should adjust the policy and impose restrictions on foreign actors. So, Lu Qin, do you think that you are also a member of the wolves? Or do you have any opinion on this? In the show, Shen Shuling was the host, and she was also the topic guide. Maybe she didn't take any position, but she interacted with the guests objectively and neutrally. However, this didn't mean that she didn't touch on sensitive topics. On the contrary, she was consciously driving the atmosphere of the conversation and creating conflicts and arguments. This was the first topic that Zhuang Dong brought up. He was undoubtedly a supporter of this sensitive topic. Seeing that Shen Shuling brought the fire of war to Lu Qin, a faint smile appeared on his face, as if he was watching a good show. In Zhuang Dong's eyes, Lu Qin was very young, which meant that he lacked enough experience, shrewdness, and adaptability. Moreover, Lu Qin had just come from the mainland, so he must be very unfamiliar with Hong Kong. Shen Shuling's question was very tricky, and it also touched on the sensitive side of Hong Kong people. If Lu Qin's answer was slightly appropriate, then his interview that night would be a failure. In other words, Zhuang Dong would win without a fight, and it would be an easy victory. In fact, it was not good to win too easily. Zhuang Dong even had a little regret. The real victory should be crushing the opponent in a fierce battle. Lu Qin pondered for a moment, as if he was thinking. It seemed that this question had really stumped him, which made Zhuang Dong more and more proud. But the audience sitting in front of the TV and watching this show had a different feeling. Ah, Kang's sister complained, "Really? How can you ask such an outrageous question? How do you expect people to answer?" She was really infatuated with Lu Qin's handsomeness and instinctively spoke up for Lu Qin. Ah, Kang sympathized with Lu Qin. If he had been questioned like this, he would have behaved even worse. In his heart, Kang agreed with the wolves. When he worked in the company, he often heard from his colleagues that the reason why the market was so bad, the prices were so high, and the housing prices were so expensive, were mainly because of the mainland. Mainlanders came to Xiangjiang to shop and buy real estate in Xiangjiang because the mainlanders took over the Xiangjiang company's business. Now, it was the movie industry's turn. What was the Hong Kong government thinking? Why didn't they think more about the locals? As the saying went, don't let the goodies flow to your own fields. His mind was a mess of thoughts, and then he thought of Xiao Wei. I wonder if Xiao Wei will be very angry. Just then, Lu Qin spoke on the TV screen. He looked very serious and said, "I think I and my colleagues from the mainland are not wolves. If you want a metaphor, I think I would like to be a catfish." Catfish? Shen Shuling was surprised. Why do you want to be a catfish? She felt that this metaphor was very strange. Lu Qin smiled slightly. His smile was sunny and brilliant, which made Shen Shuling feel a little excited. He said, "Let me tell you a story first. A long time ago, Norwegians liked to eat sardines, especially fresh sardines. But there were no aerators at that time, and the fishermen had to go out to sea to catch sardines for a long time. The sardines raised in the cabin did not like to move, and they often died on the way back to the port, so they could not be sold at a good price. But people found that many of the sardines caught by a fisherman were still alive, and he could always sell them at a high price. This secret was not revealed until the fisherman died." Lu Qin told the story in detail, and there was suspense. Not only did Shen Shuling listen attentively, even Zhuang Dong was curious. He wanted to see what Lu Qin was up to. Lu Qin continued, "It turned out that the fisherman raised a catfish in the cabin. Among the sardines, there was an extra fierce creature. They would swim and dodge instinctively, and they maintained their vitality. Finally, many of them survived to the port. After the story was finished, Shen Shuling, Zhuang Dong, and many of the audience in front of the TV faintly understood. This also included the audience at the recording site, and the atmosphere in the studio became very subtle. Lu Chen continued, "It can be said that I grew up watching Xiangjiang movies and TV dramas, mainly the Xiangjiang movies of the 1990s. There are many real classics, such as Big Lawyer, True Love of the World, Hong Kong Hero, Life and Death Rescue, and so on." Shen Shuling laughed and said, "Then you must be a fan of Lu Gangxing." Lu Chen also laughed, nodded, and said calmly, "Yes, the wish that I want to realize in Xiangjiang includes meeting my idol, and being able to say a few words to him." Shen Shuling laughed, "Then your wish will definitely come true." Lu Chen's admiration and respect for Lu Gangxing made the Xiangjiang audience in front of the TV suddenly have a better impression of him. Lu Gangxing could be said to be the symbol and representative of the Xiangjiang people's hard work. His legendary life experience, who knew how many Xiangjiang young people to work hard. His songs and films all had a profound influence in Xiangjiang. Lu Chen said, "At that time, when Xiangjiang's classic movies and TV dramas were broadcast in the mainland, they could all win very high box office and ratings, especially TV dramas. It was not an exaggeration to say that tens of thousands of people turned out to watch them. But now, how much market does Xiangjiang's movies and TV dramas still have in the mainland?" A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and the fierce counterattack was hidden in the implicit words, "As far as I know, I'm afraid there is not even 1% left." Shen Shuling was silent. The muscles on Zhuang Dong's face twitched. He wanted to refute, but found that he was unable to refute. Because what Lu Chen said was completely right. The once glorious Xiangjiang film and TV had long lost the ability to summon wind and rain in the mainland, and could only fight in their own territory and the traditional market in Southeast Asia. Lu Chen's words ruthlessly revealed the current situation of Xiangjiang's film and TV industry. Combined with the story he told before, anyone with a little bit of intelligence could understand what he wanted to express. Xiangjiang's film and TV industry was like sardines crowded in a narrow cabin, and they would die sooner or later. Unless there was a catfish that stimulated them. Chapter 480. The story of catfish originated from Lu Chen's dream world memory. In the dream world, there was a special term called catfish effect, which meant introducing competition to stimulate the vitality of enterprises or industries. The story itself was actually fabricated, not real. Lu Chen used this fresh story that did not exist in this world to debate. It was undoubtedly very vivid and brilliant. Everyone could understand it and understand his meaning. Most importantly, Hong Kong's film and television industry was in urgent need of a real reform. The last glory of Hong Kong's film and television industry was in the 1990s, and it began to decline after entering the new century. Hong Kong's practitioners clung to the glory of the past and did not want to make progress. They did not realize the great changes in the market with the advent of the internet and were finally abandoned by the market. Now, although Hong Kong's film and television industry was still very developed, its influence was far less than before. What was worse was that the themes of the films and TV series were successful. Plagiarism and imitation were common on the screen, and the content of sh*t and sh*t had not changed for 10 years. Even Hong Kong's audience was beginning to get tired of it. How could they still hold the territory of the mainland and Southeast Asian markets? The future of the industry was in danger, so the Hong Kong government cooperated with the relevant domestic departments to issue support policies to allow mainland film and television companies to invest in Hong Kong and share preferential support. To put it bluntly, it was to stimulate the local practitioners. It was ridiculous that some people in the circle did not reflect on their own problems and blindly rejected foreign competition. In the end, they would die together like sardines. In fact, there were also many problems in the mainland's film and television industry, but the prevalence of big IPs brought prosperity to the market, and the film box office rose year by year. If Hong Kong wanted to regain its glory, it had to control the mainland market again. Regarding this problem, Lu Chen simply said it openly and did not avoid it. The biggest problem of Xinjiang's film and TV series is the lack of popular IP and fresh creativity. Xinjiang does not lack talents in the film and TV field, nor does it lack channels and resources, and has accumulated rich experience for decades, but now it has fallen behind the times. Hearing his words, many TV viewers nodded secretly. People in Hong Kong liked watching movies very much. According to statistics, on average, every person in Hong Kong spent more than 300 yuan on movies every year, which was a box office of 3 to 4 billion yuan, not including other expenses in the cinema. However, many people in Hong Kong, especially young people, liked and enthusiastically pursued Hollywood blockbusters, as well as Japanese and Korean movies or TV series. Shen Shuling asked, "Is this the reason why you chose to come to Hong Kong to make a movie?" Lu Qin said that he wanted to be a catfish in the Xinjiang film and television industry. The most direct way to express it was definitely the new movie he was going to shoot. Otherwise, it would just be empty talk. One of the reasons, Lu Chen nodded without hesitation and said confidently, "This movie of mine will be an innovative and thoughtful work." Needless to say, Lu Chen's personal image was tall, handsome, and full of masculinity. As he continued to achieve achievements and improve his status in the industry, he naturally had a confident temperament that made people believe in him and trust him. His confidence not only affected the people present, but it could also be felt by the audience through the screen. Ah! In Ah Kang's room, his sister screamed and hugged her brother's arm tightly. She shook it hard and said, "Lu Chen is so handsome. I hereby announce that from today onwards, I am a fan of Lu Chen." Ah Kang couldn't help rolling his eyes and feeling sour in his heart. Xiao Wei liked Lu Chen, and his sister became a fan of Lu Chen. The charm of this mainland artist was too great. Although he had to admit that Lu Chen, who was sitting on the set and talking with confidence at this moment, was very handsome and outstanding. Among the younger generation of Hong Kong artists, there were not many who could be compared with him. Zhuang Dong was very unconvinced and couldn't help but say, "If I remember correctly, this is your first movie." The implication was that he dared to boast about his first movie. Wasn't he afraid of being cut by the wind? Lu Chen smiled faintly and said, "I debuted last year, and my first album sold more than 3 million copies. The first TV series I created and starred in broke 3% of the domestic audience rating and exceeded 30% in South Korea." Zhuang Dong was speechless without the need for a heavy hammer to strike the drum. His first album sold triple platinum, and his first TV series broke 3% of the mainland audience rating. It was also a great success in South Korea. Such dazzling achievements were beyond Lu Gongxing's reach in the first few years of his debut. What qualifications did Zhuang Dong have to think that Lu Chen's first movie would not be good? Lu Chen took the opportunity to advertise his new film, "Welcome to My First Film, A Chinese Ghost Story," at that time. Please give me more valuable comments. In fact, Lu Chen was quite wronged when he was bombarded on Three Men in Entertainment this time, because before him, many domestic film and television companies had already gone to Hong Kong to prepare to shoot movies. These film and television companies were far more famous and powerful than the newly established Lu Chen's Hong Kong studio. As a result, it was the latter who was shot down. Although he vigorously fought back against those unfavorable comments on the show, Lu Chen still wanted to get back some money. Shen Shuling couldn't help laughing. Although it was normal for stars to advertise their records or movies on the show, it was rare for Lu Chen to do it so openly. However, this showed his frankness. Shen Shuling said with a smile, "When your new movie is released, I will definitely support you with a movie ticket." Lu Chen put his palms together to express his gratitude. "Thank you, Sister Shen." 1. Can you take your husband with you? Shen Shuling laughed heartily. She was really amused. The same laughter sounded in the audience, and the atmosphere in the studio became extraordinarily harmonious, and the original sense of hostility disappeared. At this moment, when The Three Men in Entertainment was broadcast, Shen Shuling was sitting in the director's room and paying attention to the ratings of her latest episode of hosting. She saw her overjoyed look on the monitor, and a smile appeared on her face again. Now in retrospect, there were still many things that could be discovered from Lu Qin, but unfortunately, the time was too short. Ring ring, the phone in the director's room suddenly rang, and a staff member immediately picked it up. He said a few words into the microphone, and then stretched out his right hand to Shen Shuling, spreading his 5 fingers. 5%. Even though she had many years of experience in hosting and was used to great storms, Shen Shuling's heart jumped fiercely. The staff member told her through gestures that the ratings of this episode of Three Men in Entertainment had reached 5%, far exceeding the normal average of about 3%. Absolutely successful. Chapter 481. Xinjiang was one of the 3 major special administrative regions. Whether it was the area or the resident population, it was far inferior to the capital, but the population density was big, surpassing the latter. The economy was developed, trade was prosperous, and the media was abundant. There were 2 major wireless hegemons in the TV station alone, Xinjiang Satellite TV and ATV, and many small and medium-sized cable TV stations, so the competition for program content was very fierce. Even a difference of 0.1% in the ratings could cause a difference of several places. Although Xinjiang Satellite TV and ATV steadily occupied 2 out of 3 parts of the world, and the common market share of the 2 had never been less than 70%, in recent years, they had also been strongly challenged by Pearl TV and Hong Kong Cable TV. Whether it was program resources or ratings, they had been eroded little by little. There was no need to mention the competition between Xinjiang Satellite TV and ATV. The grudges between the 2 major TV stations could shoot a long TV series with hundreds of episodes. In terms of ratings, they had long been competing. The veteran ATV had not gained the upper hand in this confrontation between the giants in recent years. There were also many problems within ATV. The competition for resources between the channels was very fierce, and the internal friction was serious. As one of the trump card programs of the Variety Channel, The Three in Entertainment was also facing a severe test. As a variety talk show broadcast during primetime, the average audience rating of The Three in Entertainment was around 3%, but this figure was calculated based on the audience rating of 10 years. If it was shortened to the last 3 years, then it would fall to around 2%, sometimes even lower than 2%. This was undoubtedly a dangerous sign. Shen Shuling, who hosted The Three in Entertainment, was well aware of this. She also tried her best to improve the quality of the content of the program. She did not want to end up being axed in the end. The market was extremely cruel, and ATV was also a charity home for the elderly. A group of newcomers were eyeing her covetously. Shen Shuling looked very impressive on the surface, but in fact, she had always been trembling with fear. It was precisely because of this that she boldly went against the opinions of the public and invited the recent hot topic, Lu Qin, on The Three in Entertainment to discuss the new film support policies of the Hong Kong government. At that time, the program team, including many people in the station, thought that Lu Qin was a new artist who had just come from the mainland and had no popularity base in Xinjiang. With his identity and status, he did not meet the requirements of The Three in Entertainment. They were worried that he would be criticized by the audience and people in the circle. However, it turned out that Shen Shuling's risk was right. Maybe the audience in Xinjiang was very interested in this handsome star from the mainland, or maybe the competition brought about by the new movie support policy touched the sensitive points of many people. The ratings of the program actually rose steadily, and when it was near the end, it broke through 5%. 5%. This was quite an amazing result, enough to be comparable to those real big-name programs. The last time Entertainment 3 People Talk reached this rating was the result of inviting the heavenly queen of film, television, and song, Yen and I. Not only did Lu Qin on The 3 In not lower the level of the program, but it had of the program of the big stars. The program had also brought the program to stars. Not only did the program of The 3 In programs of the program of the program of the program of the show, but also brought it. Instead, it. Shen Shuling believed that his handsomeness, temperament, and style of conversation would inevitably become a hot topic. The host of the ATV program seemed to see a new star rising in the sky of Xiangjiang. The program was still going on, but it was coming to an end. Shen Shuling said, "Actually, the first time I met Lu Qin was on a Hong Kong blog, and then someone forwarded the video to me. At that time, you were in a bar in Lan Kwai Fong, right?" Lu Qin nodded. "Yes, that was the first time I came to Xiangjiang. My friend recommended Lan Kwai Fong to me." Shen Shuling said with a smile, "Then you participated in the La Dolce Vita 97 singing competition and sang the song that everyone is familiar with, The Love of My Life. I heard that you wrote this song yourself. Is it for your girlfriend?" Lu Qin nodded. "Yes." The first part of the program was almost a debate session, and there were more disputes and conflicts. Now that it was almost the end, the atmosphere was relaxed, so it was time to talk about gossip. Shen Shuling controlled the rhythm of the conversation very well. Of course, he was also happy to cooperate. The only one who was not happy was probably the other guest, Zhuang Dong. Ever since he was hit by Lu Chen's several consecutive counterattacks, he was basically silent and no longer aggressive. Everyone's eyes were sharp. They had to admit that they lost the debate. If they continued to pester endlessly, they would only make a fool of themselves in front of the public, and become a joke to their opponents. Shen Shuling obviously also noticed Zhuang Dong's predicament, so she changed to a relaxed topic. She turned to face the camera and said with a smile, "Many of our friends in front of the TV may not know, but Mr. Lu Chen's girlfriend is the domestic pop music queen, Miss Qin Fei, Moreover, Miss Qin Fei's 2 recent TV series have created miracles both at home and abroad. It must be noted that the screenwriter and male lead of these 2 TV series are both Lu Qin." "Then, Lu Qin, in your first movie, is the female lead still Miss Qin Fei, This time, Lu Qin shook his head. "No, the female lead is a new actress from Xiangjiang. In addition to the male lead and the director of A Chinese Ghost Story, most of the other actors are from the same industry in Xiangjiang, including our partners." The new film support policy issued by the Xiangjiang government had restrictions. For example, in the movies submitted for review, local actors in Xiangjiang needed to account for more than 60%. This was a hard rule. However, the main reason why Qin Fei was not chosen for A Chinese Ghost Story was because of the schedule. Shen Shuling said, "Then we will wait and see and look forward to the screening of your movie. In addition, at the end of the program, can you respond to the audience's call and sing The Love of My Life again here?" She added, "I also like this song very much." Lu Qin was pleased. "Thank you. Of course, that's no problem." This was arranged in advance by the program team. It was not a sudden attack on Lu Qin. He had already expected it. Without the official release of the official version of The Love of My Life, only relying on a mobile phone video, had almost become Lu Chen's current label. This classic Cantonese song had helped him to integrate into the entertainment industry of Xiangjiang to a large extent. It had an influence among the young people of Xiangjiang and could be considered to have played the greatest role. Therefore, this episode of Entertainment Talk with Three People ended with Lu Chen playing the piano and singing "The Love of My Life." After the program was officially broadcast, it caused a great response both inside and outside the circle of Xiangjiang. Chapter 482. November 25th, Tianda, Zodiac, Founding Day. Good for opening a business, seeking wealth, trading, traveling, moving, dating. The opening ceremony of Lu Chen's first film, A Chinese Ghost Story, was held in the famed Temple of the Lion Rock Film and Television City. The famed Temple of the Lion Rock Film and Television City was an old site. It was first built in the late Qing dynasty. Later, it was abandoned after two disasters. The ruins were overgrown with weeds, and it became a safe haven for wild foxes. In the early 1990s, when the Lion Rock Film and Television City began to build, the old site of the famed temple was included. The scene designer did not restore and rebuild it, but renovated it on the basis of the ruins, making it an excellent scene for shooting zombie and horror films. Many of the Xiangjiang zombie and ghost films that were popular in the 1990s were shot here. But now, due to the changes in the market, the popular themes in the past were no longer popular, and the utilization of the old site of the famed temple had decreased a lot. Therefore, it was easy for the studio to rent it at a low cost. There was a long table in front of the temple, which was used to worship gods. It was covered with red velvet, with a statue of Emperor Guan in the middle. On the left and right sides were incense burners, roast suckling pigs, fresh fruits, and so on. A camera was placed on the right side of the table, also covered with a red cloth, so that no one could see it. In the open space a little further away, firecrackers were lit. Then, in the crackling sound, the crew members burned incense and worshipped the gods in turn, praying for a smooth shooting and the new film to be a hit. The ceremony of worshipping gods first originated in Hong Kong. People in Hong Kong believed in feng shui superstitions and liked to pray for good luck. The practice of worshipping gods and Buddha was very popular, and the film crew was no exception. There were many taboos. For example, the direction in which they prayed to the gods could not be wrong. At different times and different locations, everyone prayed to the gods in different directions. Roughly speaking, they had to pay attention to all directions. If they were to place it in the southwest instead of the south, there would be a difference of thousands of miles. Some of them even had to be accurate down to the latitude and longitude. It sounded incredible, but many Xiangjiang film crews had to invite experts to calculate before they started shooting, and they were not careless at all. Otherwise, if there were any twists and turns during the shooting process, they would inevitably suspect that they had encountered some bad luck. Lu Chen's studio had just been established, and its partner, Jiayang Pictures, was not a top company in the industry. Therefore, the opening ceremony was not very big, but it was also very grand. Zhou Yi, the behind-the-scenes boss of Jiayang Pictures, personally came to the scene. Of course, he accompanied his cousin, Nie Mingzhu, the heroine of A Chinese Ghost Story. Mrs. Jean also came, together with her two goddaughters, Ji Xiaodai and Li Xinyan. The two girls had arranged a small role in the film. Chen Wenqiang's daughter, and Chen Si. Chen Xiao Yi Chen Studio. After Yi graduated, Yi, and Studio, Yi, and AO, and Yi, Chen, Yi, and Yi, 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 and Studio, Chen, Chen, Chen Chen, Chen, and Wen, and Yi, and Studio, Wu, Wu, Wen, Chen, Chen Studio, and Chen. Chen, Yang, Studio, and Wen, Chen, Studio, Chen, Chen, Chen Chen Chen, Studio, and Chen, Yi, and Chen, Yi, and Chen, 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 Yi, Yin and Chen. Chen Si played the role of Xiaoqing in A Chinese Ghost Story, a supporting female character with some weight. In fact, in the movie The Chinese Ghost Story, there were only 4 important characters: Ning Kaichen, Nia Shaoqian, Yan Qixia, and the villain, Granny Tree Fairy. Basically, all the limelight was focused on them, especially the first 3. As the first supporting female character, Shaoqing did not have many scenes in the movie, but both Chen Wenxiang and Chen Si were extremely satisfied. Other than Lu Qin, there were no other big-name actors in the movie. Ma Rongjin had long been outdated and reduced to being an extra, and most of the others were newcomers. Lu Qin himself had just made a name for himself in the film and television industry in Hong Kong, and he did not rely on the work itself. However, the investment of The Chinese Ghost Story was as high as 30 million yuan. Although it was not a top-notch production, it was precisely because there were no big names that there was no high salary. This large sum of money had to be invested in filming and post-production. It would be unfair if it did not produce a high-quality product. Chen Si was already extremely lucky compared to her peers to be able to get such an important supporting female role in a movie for the first time. She was standing at a very high starting point from the beginning. As long as A Chinese Ghost Story did not fail miserably after it was released, she would have valuable qualifications. Seniority represented status. After offering incense and worshipping the gods, Lu Qin, Zhou Yi, Wan Shaoquan, and Nie Mingzhu worked together to remove the red veil on the camera. The crew members gathered around applauded in unison, and there were also media reporters taking photos. It was said that this procedure originated from the fear of scratching. The so-called scratching referred to the film in the early days of the film era, when the film in the camera was accidentally scratched by the parts inside during filming. Once scratching occurred, it would cause immeasurable losses to the crew. However, machine scratching was unpredictable and difficult to prevent, so the only thing that could be done was to cover the camera with a red cloth to suppress evil. Nowadays, cameras had already been digitized, so there was no possibility of scratching. However, the more precise something was, the greater the problem, so this custom was still retained. After the red cloth was removed, the opening ceremony of A Chinese Ghost Story was basically over. Finally, it was time for the representatives of the crew to be interviewed by the media. Most of the media reporters were invited by Jiayang Pictures. There were more than a dozen of them, both big and small. They were there to support and to promote the film. Every reporter was stuffed with red packets. If a film and television entertainment company wanted to gain a foothold in Hong Kong, they could not afford to offend the people in the media. Otherwise, they would scold them all day on TV and newspapers, or make up some false rumors. Then, they would not be able to make money. Of course, it was impossible to please all the media. Jiayang Pictures was a well-known film and television production company, and its boss, Zhou Yi, was a businessman in Hong Kong. He did not lack connections in the relevant media. However, there was a portion of the media that came uninvited. These reporters were obviously very interested in Lu Qin, so after the opening ceremony ended, they immediately surrounded him and asked him questions. Mr. Lu Qin, are you going to use this film to change the structure of Hong Kong's film industry? Why do you have such confidence and certainty? If this film flops, what are you going to do? Return to the mainland. Mr. Lu Qin, as far as I know, none of the actors in this film are big names. May I ask? The reporters' questions were like a machine gun, and all of them were aggressive. Chen Wenxiang and Wan Shaoquan, who were standing at the side, had their faces turned black on the spot. Zhou Yi was very shrewd, and there was a hint of displeasure in his eyes. Chapter 483. The entertainment reporters of Xiangjiang were the existences that the Xiangjiang entertainment circle loved and hated. They could praise an artist to the sky, but they could also easily pull them down from the sky. Many Xiangjiang celebrities had a kind of fear towards entertainment reporters. In Xiangjiang, How to properly deal with entertainment reporters was a compulsory course for all new artists. If they failed this course, they would suffer sooner or later. There were many examples in the past that could prove it. As soon as the opening ceremony of A Chinese Ghost Story ended, Lu Chen was surrounded by these uninvited entertainment reporters. The questions were more tricky and even worse. This made people feel worried because Lu Chen was a star from the mainland. He had only debuted for a short time, so he definitely had not experienced such a scene. Once his youthful temperament flared up, the consequences would be unpredictable. With the nature of Shangjiang's media, a small matter could be blown up into 10. They were not easy to deal with. Chen Wenxiang saw that the situation was not good and quickly gave Zhang Xiaofang a look. He was ready to step forward to protect Lu Chen and separate him from the entertainment reporters to prevent Lu Chen from saying the wrong thing. However, Lu Chen did not panic at all. Even when he heard the obviously malicious questions, he still had a calm smile on his face, looking extremely calm. A few days ago at Xiangjiang Airport, Lu Chen had already seen a similar scene and had a direct understanding of Xiangjiang's paparazzi. He pondered for a moment and said to the microphone that was sent to his mouth, "There is no such thing as failure in my dictionary. I believe that this, A Chinese Ghost Story, will definitely be a success. As for whether it can change the pattern of Xiangjiang's movies, I don't dare to boast. Just as I said in ATV's entertainment trio, I want to be a catfish. A catfish is not a crocodile, and I don't have that big of an appetite. As for the quality of the movie, you are very welcome to go to the cinema to watch and evaluate it. You can leave your contact information here. Our studio will give you free tickets and premiere gifts." Lu Chen's answer could be said to be a combination of words and actions. He cleverly avoided the trap of the reporter's question, but he also fully demonstrated his confidence. In the end, he did not forget to give some benefits. Whether it was Chen Wenxiang or Zhou Yi, the heavy burden in their hearts was instantly lifted. Most of the time, Lu Chen's youth made people feel uneasy, but in reality, he had never disappointed them. There is no such thing as failure in my dictionary. This sentence was absolutely domineering. When the entertainment reporters heard it, their eyes lit up, as if they had grasped something important. One of them eagerly asked, "The investment for A Chinese Ghost Story is said to be 30 million yuan. Although it's not considered a top-notch production, it's still considered very high. Since the investment is so high, why don't I see any stars in the movie? Is it because you can't get him, or is the pay all on your own, or is 30 million just a bluff?" Before the launch ceremony, Lu Chen's Hong Kong studio and Jiayang Pictures announced the news related to A Chinese Ghost Story on their respective blogs, including the investment amount and the cast. The reporter questioned Lu Chen aggressively about the 30 million budget. Lu Chen took a deep look at him and asked, "May I ask which media are you from?" The other party replied proudly, "I'm a reporter from Polo Daily." Polo Daily. Lu Chen had an impression of this Hong Kong newspaper. He smiled faintly and said, "First of all, I'm acting in A Chinese Ghost Story for free, so there's no problem of me spending the budget on myself." A common method for stars to invest in movies or TV series was to sign a high salary for themselves. On the one hand, it was to increase their value, and on the other hand, it was also to increase the investment amount as a publicity point. For example, Lu Chen's real value was 10 million yuan, but it became 50 million yuan through left-handed publicity. Many star artists, including some big stars, did this, and investors were happy to cooperate. However, in the movie A Chinese Ghost Story, Lu Chen did the opposite. He did not take a penny, and his goal was to use more of the budget on pre-filming and post-production. Zero salary. The budget was used on filming and production. The expressions of the entertainment reporters present couldn't help but be a little strange. In the film and television industry, such a thing could not be said to be unique, but it was also a rare existence now. Nowadays, Hong Kong's movies either took the low-budget, vulgar path or were blockbusters with big stars. There were really very few people who could sink down and seriously produce a movie. Some of them had already been eliminated by the market. The young man in front of them really gave everyone a different feeling. The reporter from Polo Daily did not give up. He was rejected on the budget issue, so he suddenly changed the topic and pointed his spear at Ma Rongqing, who was standing next to him. As far as I know, Mr. Ma Rongqing is a famous box office poison in the circle. Why did you invite him to play an important supporting role in this movie? The nickname Box Office Poison was obtained by Ma Rongqing in the later stage of his acting career. At that time, the movies he participated in were losing money, but it was maliciously imposed on him. In fact, at that time, Hong Kong's movies were going downhill. Ma Rongqing's type was relatively fixed, and the roles he was invited to play were basically the same. The theme itself was not good, and coupled with the environment, it was strange that he did not fail. However, after the nickname spread, Ma Rongqing's acting career was basically ruined. No one invited him to act in movies anymore, so his situation was getting worse and worse. He had to be reduced to working as a handyman in Lion Rock to make a living. In front of everyone, the reporter from Polo Daily opened Ma Rongqing's scar, which made Ma Rongqing's face suddenly turn red. He couldn't help clenching his fists. His knuckles turned white because of the excessive force, but he lowered his head. Because he couldn't do anything, whether to refute or fight back, he would only fall into the other party's trap. Ma Rongqing didn't want to lose this precious opportunity, so he could only silently endure the humiliation. Lu Chen noticed Ma Rongqing's expression, and his eyes flashed with an imperceptible sharpness. He said without hesitation, "I have never heard of box office poison. In my eyes, there are only good actors and bad actors, and Ma Rongqing is an excellent and dedicated actor. I believe that he will be able to play the important role of Yan Qixia well. This is why I invited him." Lu Chen's words were sonorous and powerful, with unshakable firmness. It was his strong support for Ma Rongqing. It was also a powerful counterattack to the reporter with ulterior motives. Ma Rongqing couldn't help but straighten his back and raise his head again. At this moment, his heart was filled with the feeling of a gentleman would die for a bosom friend. Chapter 484. Mainland star Lu Chen shoots new film for zero pay. Is it real or just hype? Lu Chen supports Ma Rongqing. Is salted fish about to make a comeback? Industry insiders assert that mainland actors are afraid of not acclimatizing to Hong Kong, and their prospects are worrying. Is it arrogance or confidence? Is an investment of 30 million yuan a waste of water? The box office poison of the past is shooting a new film today. On the second day after A Chinese Ghost Story officially started shooting, many media and entertainment pages in Xiangjiang publish relevant news. Other than a few paid news, most of the other newspapers and periodicals were full of doubts. Such a situation would basically not happen in the mainland. Xiangjiang's territory was small and the size of the market was limited. There were many media and most of them only paid attention to Hong Kong news. There were not that many gossip news in the entertainment industry to hype. Therefore, Lu Chen, who had recently become the focus of attention, inevitably became the target of some media. The pressure of public opinion he faced was actually related to the mentality of many Hong Kong people. Many people in Xiangjiang believed that the entry of mainland funds and enterprises would intensify competition and snatch the jobs of local people. Although Lu Chen threw out the catfish theory in Three Entertainment Men Talk and dispelled the doubts of some people, the influence of the program was limited after all. He still needed to prove himself with more facts. For some of the Xiangjiang media who were eager to see the world in chaos, Lu Chen had become the representative of the mainland film and television industry in Xiangjiang. They were desperately trying to dig out topics from him. Among them, the fiercest was the Polo Daily. This well-known newspaper in Xiangjiang published 3 reports in its entertainment section at the same time, questioning Lu Chen's zero pay, ridiculing the box office poison Marongzhen, and asserting that A Chinese Ghost Story would not be successful. One of the articles listed the data seriously and quoted the analysis and comments of so-called industry experts. In the end, the conclusion was that the mainlanders represented by Lu Chen would not be able to gain a foothold in Xinjiang's entertainment industry for long. There were many criticisms and few praises. There were very few neutral people. The citizens of Xinjiang watched the liveliness, and to a large extent, it promoted A Chinese Ghost Story, which had just started shooting. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story, who had already entered the shooting state, had no time to care about the outside world. They were busy working on the set of Lion Rock Film City, trying to finish shooting before the new year. Crack! Wan Shaoquan frowned, waved the loudspeaker in his hand, and said loudly, "What's wrong with the lighting here? Adjust it immediately and reshoot." Wan Shaoquan, who picked up the microphone again, felt as if he had been given a new life. He had inexhaustible energy. His position in the crew was very special. He had the title of assistant director. In the future, his name would not appear at the beginning or the end of the movie that was broadcasted in the mainland, including the publicity. The reason was obvious. For at least 2 years, Wan Shaoquan would have to tuck his tail between his legs. The nominal director of A Chinese Ghost Story was Lu Chen, but in fact, the film was directed by Wan Shaoquan. It was nothing more than to avoid the policy. Because of this, Wan Shaoquan paid more attention to this movie than Lu Chen. Before the shooting started, he studied the script all night and discussed the plot and characters with Lu Chen. He put all his attention into it. Wan Shaoquan was good at shooting movies with costume themes. Many of his previous works had been successful at the box office and received good reviews. Moreover, he was known for his serious and meticulous work in the circle. Otherwise, Lu Chen would not have chosen him to direct his first movie. With Lu Chen's full support, enough funding, and away from the domestic right and wrong, Wan Shaoquan is very scary when he is serious. After a few days of shooting, the members of the crew have been convinced by the director from China, and there have been no troublesome incidents of overtly complying but covertly opposing. Of course, the participation of Jiayang Pictures was indispensable during the shooting process. Today's scene was the scene where Ning Kaichen met Nye Shaoqian for the first time in Lanrua Temple. Lu Chen, who was dressed like a scholar, had a great change in temperament under the careful makeup of the makeup artist. Because of the mistakes in the lighting, the reshooting went smoothly. It was already past noon when the shooting was finished. Wan Shaoquan finally let go of the starving crew members and told them to quickly fill their stomachs. The stage manager's assistant brought over the incubator, which was filled with stacked lunch boxes. Although there were not many roles in A Chinese Ghost Story, the crew members who should not be missing were all there. Big and small people added up to nearly 100 people, so that the shooting progress could be ensured. With so many people busy on the set, they certainly could not go to restaurants outside to eat. Otherwise, it would waste a lot of time going back and forth, and it would also affect their working state. Therefore, whether it was in China or in Hong Kong, the crew members basically ate takeout lunch boxes. The staff contacted the restaurant in advance, ordered the quantity and price of the lunch boxes, and delivered them on time. "Let's eat." Everyone gathered around and went to take the lunch boxes, then found a place to sit down and eat. Although Lu Chen was an investor, the screenwriter, and the lead actor, he and director Wan Shaoquan also ate the same lunch boxes. There was no special treatment, and it could be said that they shared the joys and sorrows with everyone. But today's situation was a little special. When Lu Chen opened the lid of the lunch box, he could not help but frown. Because the quality of the lunch box in his hand was really a little terrible. The rice was yellow, as if it was steamed with old rice. A few pieces of vegetables and cucumbers were wilted, and a few were not fresh. The poached eggs were missing, and the remaining 2 pieces of ribs only had bones and no meat. This lunchbox would probably be considered trash even if it was fed to a dog. What's going on? Today's lunchbox is so bad. Is it even edible? What's going on? It's all rotten. Hee hee, you guys eat, I'll just watch. Damn it. It was not only Lu Chen's lunchbox, but the rest were the same. The crew members all complained. Seeing such a scene, Lu Chen could not sit still. He stood up with a sullen face, waved at the assistant who was still distributing the lunchboxes, and said, "Please come here." The young assistant quickly put down the lunchbox, wiped his hands, ran over and asked, "Young Master Lu, what's the matter?" Lu Chen handed the lunchbox in his hand to him. "What do you think?" The assistant looked at the lunchbox, then looked at Lu Chen, and said awkwardly, "Young Master Lu, I don't know." Lu Chen twitched the corner of his mouth and said lightly, "Then invite Old Merchant over." Old Merchant was a staff member of the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story, a veteran in the circle sent by Jiayang Pictures. Logically speaking, under his management, such a thing should not have happened. There must be something wrong. Chapter 485. Old Merchant soon arrived. He was in his 40s and had a short stature and small eyes. He gave people the impression that he was very smart and eloquent. He was very good at coordinating all aspects. Although they didn't know each other before, Lu Chen was very satisfied with Old Merchant's ability after a few days. A crew member was the person in charge of daily affairs during the filming process. His main task was to take care of the basic necessities of the crew members, such as food, clothing, housing, and transportation. It was tedious but essential. If a crew didn't have a good crew member, there would often be a lot of problems. When Old Merchant saw the completely substandard box lunches, his expression suddenly changed. He was shocked and angry. "Child Lu, I'm really sorry. I'll go and find out what happened right away." Lu Chen nodded. "Then go and ask them to change the batch, or just order the box lunches from another restaurant." Although he didn't reprimand Old Merchant was obviously very stressed. He left in a hurry. Naturally, no one ate the box lunches. Everyone put the lunches back into the incubator. The atmosphere on the set was a bit strange. Many people sat together and whispered. Wan Xiaoquan said helplessly, "So, they don't want to do business anymore." Chen Wenxiang said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it's not that simple." Lu Chen was shocked and asked, "Uncle Chang?" Chen Wenxiang hesitated and said, "The box lunches in the Lion Rock studio are occupied by 2 clubs. No one else can intervene. I don't know which restaurant our crew booked, but there's probably something wrong with them. Otherwise, no restaurant would do something like this." Clubs. Lu Chen was stunned. He didn't expect that a small matter like eating box lunches would involve Hong Kong's clubs. The clubs Chen Wenxiang mentioned were definitely not regular and good mutual benefit organizations, but gangs. In layman's terms, they were Hong Kong's underworld gangs. The gangs in Hong Kong were once very popular in the 1970s and 1980s. At that time, the activities of Xinghe, Sinan, Hongtang and other triad organizations were rampant. There were hundreds of thousands of gang members, and their forces were spread all over Hong Kong, Macau, Treasure Island and several countries in Southeast Asia. They even established branches in the Chinese areas of Europe and the United States. These big gangs and societies operated drug trafficking, smuggling, prostitution, piracy, gambling, and so on. The small societies under them collected protection fees and dominated the market, causing the public order of Xiangjiang to be very bad. At that time in Xiangjiang, even the rich and powerful felt insecure and had to bring bodyguards with them when they went out. Otherwise, they might be kidnapped and blackmailed by a few daring gangsters. On July 15, 1987, the long-accumulated conflict between the two gangs, Xin and Hung Tang, broke out. Thousands of gang members from both sides fought on the streets of the prosperous areas of the new territories, resulting in the tragic result of 78 deaths and 154 serious injuries. There were countless minor injuries, and several innocent passers-by were killed by stray bullets. The bloody case of the new territories on July 15 shocked the whole of Hong Kong, causing the people to protest on the streets. It also prompted the Xiangjiang government to finally make up their minds to solve this cancer, and specially applied for help from the troops stationed in Hong Kong. In March 1988, in the crackdown carried out by the Xiangjiang government, many triad organizations that had been rampant in Hong Kong for decades were uprooted. A large number of backbone members were either killed on the spot or arrested and imprisoned, which made countless people in Xiangjiang applaud. At this point, the public order of Xiangjiang had been fundamentally improved. However, the triad organizations that had great influence in Xiangjiang society did not completely disappear. After the old gangs such as Xinghe, Sinan, and Hongtang collapsed, new gangs emerged again. However, these new gangs no longer brazenly engaged in illegal activities. They registered companies to engage in legal operations and secretly did some business. The members of the gangs no longer easily wielded knives and guns, and the means of making money were more hidden. They even hired lawyers as legal consultants. This kind of new gang was even more difficult to deal with. Dealing with them was undoubtedly a very troublesome thing. And the gangs in Xiangjiang had deep entanglements with the entertainment industry. Many film and television entertainment companies had the background and power of gangs in the past. Although they were basically washed clean, they were still secretly connected. In just a few minutes, Old Merchant came back with 3 people. Old Merchant's face was very ugly. He introduced to Lu Qin, "Young Master Lu, this is Manager Jiang of Honghua Restaurant Management Limited. Our crew's lunchbox is ordered through Honghua Restaurant. Manager Jiang and the others have something to talk to us about." This Manager Jiang of Honghua Restaurant was a middle-aged man with the head of a mouse and the eyes of a mouse. His hair was thickly oiled and he was worried that even flies would not be able to stand on it. He was wearing a suit and a tie, and he also wore a pair of nondescript gold-rimmed glasses, giving people the impression that he was wretched. "Young Master Lu, hello." Manager Jiang nodded and bowed to greet Lu Qin, opening his mouth to reveal a mouthful of gold teeth. Following behind him were 2 burly men. Their faces were expressionless, and their bare arms were covered with dark green tattoos. Their bulging muscles made them look like they were very powerful. Lu Qin immediately understood when he saw this posture. He nodded and lightly said, "Okay, let's talk somewhere else." It was definitely not okay here. The surrounding crew members were all watching, and many people's eyes were full of doubt. The place chosen for the conversation was a meditation room in the temple, which was also used as the crew's temporary office. After sitting down, Lu Qin went straight to the point and asked, "Manager Jiang, can you explain what happened to our crew's lunchbox today? Did we not pay the fees that we owed you?" Manager Jiang said with a smile, "Young Master Lu, your crew's food and beverage fees were paid on time. We are also very sorry that there was a problem with today's lunchbox. I can guarantee that this kind of thing will not happen again." But, he suddenly changed the topic and said, "The prices in Xiangjiang are very high now. Recently, the prices of vegetables and pork have risen greatly. If we follow the original price, our company will lose money, so what?" Manager Jiang did not say any more and looked at Lu Qin with a smile. Lu Qin calmly continued for him, "So you want to raise the price?" "I'm really sorry." Manager Jiang rubbed his hands, and the smile on his face became even wider, there is nothing we can do about the price increase. Our company's employees also have to eat. Lu Chen interrupted his verbose words. Just say it, how much do you want to raise it? Manager Jiang gave Lu Chen a thumbs up. Young Master Lu is really straightforward, worthy of being a big star from the mainland. In fact, it's not much. In the future, pay 55 yuan for a lunch box, we guarantee the quality, 55 yuan. If Lu Chen remembered correctly, the original price of the lunch box was 30 yuan, and now the price was increased to 55 yuan, which was equivalent to nearly doubling. Chapter 486. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story had nearly 100 members. If the temporary hired extras were added, there would be more than 100 people. Even if 100 people were counted, 2 meals a day would require a total of 200 boxed meals. Originally, 30 yuan per box, the basic cost of meals per day would be 6,000 yuan. Now that it had soared to 55 yuan, that was 11,000 yuan, they had to pay an additional 4,500 yuan. The scenes involved in this movie were basically all in the Lion Rock film and television base. In the case of no outdoor shooting, the crew would need to stay for at least a month, which meant that they had to pay an extra 100,000 to 200,000 yuan. Honghua Restaurant was really black-hearted. According to the boxed meals from yesterday, it was at most 15 yuan in the mainland. If the quantity was large, they could still get a discount. Their profit itself was already very good. The prices in Xiangjiang were high, but not to this extent. Wan Shaoquan, who was sitting next to Lu Chen, couldn't stand it anymore. You guys are. Before he finished speaking, he was stopped by Lu Chen. Lu Chen's expression didn't change. He nodded and said, if you can guarantee the quality of the food, then we can accept the price of 55 yuan, but we won't pay for this batch of boxed meals at noon. Manager Jiang obviously didn't expect Lu Chen to be so easy to talk to. He asked for an exorbitant price, but Lu Chen actually agreed so easily. Even with his cunning, he couldn't help but be stunned. Really? Lu Chen hooked his finger and knocked on the table, saying lightly, I'm not kidding. That's good. Manager Jiang suddenly showed a proud smile. His eyes flashed a touch of greed, and he continued to say, in addition, the boxed meals are boxed meals, and the delivery will cost more. Was Honghua crazy? Even Chen Wenxiang looked angry. Manager Jiang, this is against the rules, isn't it? Clubs also had their own rules, especially the whitewashing clubs. Even if they were to bully others, they still had to follow the rules. Otherwise, if they caused public anger, they would be the unlucky ones. Previously, Manager Jiang asked for an exorbitant price. He nearly doubled the price of the boxed meals, and Lu Chen agreed. Now, he actually wanted to pay for the delivery. It was simply a naked extortion. There was something wrong with the smell inside. Manager Jiang glanced at Chen Wenxiang meaningfully and said, Brother Chang, rules are set by people. Don't you know that in this circle? That's the rule in our company now. He looked at Lu Chen as if he was looking at a fat sheep. Young Master Lu, you are a big star who makes a lot of money every day. If you come to Xiangjiang to shoot a movie, you will definitely make a lot of money. You don't need our hard-earned money, do you? Hee, Lu Chen smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. I don't like trouble. If I can solve the problem with money, then I don't mind spending some money to avoid disaster. But this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of trouble. Since your company doesn't have the sincerity to cooperate, then you don't need to send boxed meals anymore. I believe that our crew won't be starving because of this. To be honest, the main reason why Lu Chen chose to start his film career in Xiangjiang was because of the new film support policy issued by the Xiangjiang government. With this policy, he could easily enter the domestic film market, and he could also establish a foothold in Xinjiang and radiate to Treasure Island, Australia and Southeast Asian countries. The benefits were self-evident. However, shortcuts were not easy to take. Lu Chen really didn't consider the gangs and clubs in Xinjiang at that time, because there was basically no such problem in domestic movies or TV series. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. Lu Chen was not a strong dragon, so he was willing to spend more money in exchange for peace. As long as a Chinese ghost story was successfully filmed and released, how much he spent would naturally be earned back. However, the other party's greed and shamelessness were far beyond Lu Chen's expectations. They were insatiable, which made his patience completely disappear. Without Butcher Zhang, did they have to eat pigs with hair? Nonsense. Hearing Lu Chen's resolute refusal, and his attitude turned 180 degrees, Manager Zhang's smile suddenly froze on his face, and he looked quite ridiculous. Lu Chen didn't give him a chance to speak. He got up and said, "Uncle Chang, see the guest out." So ruthless, Manager Zhang was furious. A strong man who had been standing behind him immediately stepped forward, raised his hand and pointed at Lu Chen and shouted, "How can you talk to our Manager Zhang? Don't be so shameless." Gangs and clubs were gangs and clubs. The factor of violence had long been hidden in their blood. Moreover, it was impossible to do this kind of monopoly business without strong power. The people brought by Manager Jiang were actually thugs. If everyone was good, they would naturally be decorations. But now that it was time to turn hostile, they had to show their strength. The hairy arms were black and thick, and the fingers with long radishes were about to poke Lu Chen's face. The stern rebuke was 100% deterrent for ordinary people. However, Lu Chen wasn't an ordinary person, and he wasn't alone. There was no need for Lu Chen to respond. Wan Yong, who was originally sitting beside Lu Chen, suddenly made a move. He grabbed the opponent's finger with lightning speed and pulled it up. Ah! The burly man involuntarily let out a blood-curdling scream, startling everyone present. Under the severe pain, he instinctively raised his leg and wanted to kick Wan Yong, but Wan Yong's right foot kicked his knee first, causing him to suddenly lose his balance and heavily fall to the ground. This was the result of Wan Yong being lenient. If it was a life-and-death fight, the finger bones and patella would have been broken into several pieces. Wan Yong let go of his hand and stared at the other thug who was ready to make a move. No one doubted that if this guy made any unusual moves, he would inevitably suffer from Wan Yong's thunderous counterattack. Manager Jiang was also scared. After a while, he came back to his senses, gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, business can't be done, but benevolence and righteousness still exist. Let's wait and see." These two sentences were a bit incoherent, but no one thought it was funny. The people from Honghua restaurant left dejectedly. Wan Xiaoquan, Chen Wenxiang, and the others didn't feel happy at all. Everyone knew that the real trouble was yet to come. The other party wouldn't let it go so easily. Lu Chen looked at Old Merchant and said, "When we first negotiated the cooperation, Jiayang Pictures had a guarantee. Now that something like this has happened, I want to know what your boss thinks." Compared to Lu Chen's studio, Jiayang Pictures was the local bully. Using the local bully to deal with the local bully was naturally the best choice. Lu Chen wasn't afraid of trouble, and he wouldn't easily take everything on himself. Otherwise, what was the point of having a partner? Under his intense gaze, Old Merchant felt a lot of pressure. Fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Young Master Lu, Jiayang Pictures will give you an explanation." Lu Chen nodded and said, "That's for the best." However, in his heart, he didn't think that Jiayang Pictures would succeed. It was impossible for Honghua to not know about the existence of Jiayang Pictures. Manager Jiang was here to slap them in the face. Let's wait and see. Chapter 487. After driving away Honghua's people, the hundreds of people in the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story still had to eat. This problem was easy to solve. Lu Chen asked Chen Wenxiang to drive to the nearest restaurant to buy lunch boxes. Honghua Catering couldn't monopolize all the big and small restaurants around Lion Rock Mountain, could it? He gathered the crew members and gave them a brief explanation, asking them to overcome their difficulties for the time being. Of course, the crew members expressed their understanding. Even if many of them were muttering in their hearts, they all supported Lu Chen, the real boss, on the surface. It was not a big deal to eat late. They wouldn't die even if they skipped a meal. By the time Chen Wenxiang came back with the lunch boxes and everyone finished eating, it was already 2 p.m. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story was not large. Most of the staff were sent by Jiayang Pictures. The news spread quickly inside, so everyone basically knew what had happened. This made the people in the crew a little anxious. As a result, the shooting in the afternoon went wrong frequently. Wan Shaoquan didn't know how many NGs he had made, which made him annoyed and his voice a lot rougher. Seeing this situation, Lu Chen decisively called it a day and asked everyone to go back to rest early. In order to calm people down, he also asked Chen Wenxiang to pay the crew a meal fee. The amount was not much, but it was considered a dinner fee, because the crew originally provided 2 meals for lunch and dinner. At the end of the day, Chen Wenxiang was careful and sent 2 more people to stay on the set to ensure safety. This was the trouble of offending gangs. If the other party played tricks on the set, it was possible that all the previous work of the crew would be wasted. After returning, Lu Chen gathered several important members of the studio together and discussed countermeasures at the same time of dinner. In this regard, the most experienced person was definitely Chen Wenxiang. He said, "I just called my friend to confirm it. The backer of Honghua Catering is Xing Yihou." At the end of the 80s, the triad organizations in Xiangjiang were severely attacked by the government. The 3 major gangs, Xinghe, Sinan, and Hongtang, collapsed. However, a centipede died but did not die, and many new gangs were re-established on the basis of the 3 gangs. Xing Yihou was one of them. The Jiang family that established and controlled Xing Yihou was quite famous in Xiangjiang. On the surface, the businesses they operated involved real estate, finance, import and export trade, catering and so on. The eldest of the Jiang family was called Jiang Tai. He was shrewd and valiant, and his business methods were rather ruthless. He married 5 wives and had more than 10 children. Among them, his 5 sons were known as the 5 tigers in the Victory Hole. The general manager of Honghua Restaurant was Jiang Tai's 3rd son, Jiang Qinghua. In the industry, Jiang Qinghua's reputation was quite good, so Chen Wenxiang was very puzzled by Honghua Restaurant's tricks against the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story, because it was against the rules. "I've already asked a friend in the industry to investigate and see what's going on." Chen Wenxiang continued, "We have no grudge against Jiang Qinghua. If Jiayang Pictures is not in trouble, then someone is trying to deal with us through Jiang Qinghua." Chen Wenxiang first suspected Jiayang Pictures when something like this happened. He didn't know Jiang Qinghua at all, and he had never offended the Jiang family. Needless to say, Lu Chen had only been in Xiangjiang for a few days. Jiang Qinghua couldn't suddenly go crazy and cause trouble for them for no reason. As for Jiayang Pictures, it was hard to say. The history of Jiayang Pictures could be traced back to the 1980s. At that time, the gangs in Xiangjiang were very powerful, and they had a great influence on the film and television entertainment industry. If a film and television entertainment company did not have the background or relationship with a gang, it would be impossible for it to survive. At this point, who could guarantee that there weren't any old grudges left behind? In addition, there was Zhou Yi, the behind-the-scenes boss of Jiayang Pictures. He had been doing business in Xiangjiang for so many years, and he was so smart that he must have offended a lot of people. All of these could cause trouble for the crew. Wan Shaoquan frowned and asked, "Then what should we do?" He wouldn't encounter such a thing when he was filming in China. What happened today made him feel very bad. He originally wanted to shoot the movie seriously, but he didn't expect that there would be new problems as soon as they started. Lu Chen said, "I've already asked Jiayang Pictures to give us an explanation. Our shooting plan should not be changed for the time being. Tomorrow's lunchbox will be bought by Brother Zhang outside. It won't be troublesome if there are people and cars." Although that was what he said, everyone knew that things would not be so simple. Honghua hadn't achieved his goal, and it was impossible for him to stop. However, in the current situation, he could only take one step at a time and deal with the situation as it came. Wan Shaoquan and Chen Wenxiang looked at each other and nodded. Ring, ring, ring. At this time, Lu Chen's cell phone suddenly rang. He took it out and looked at it. It's Zhou Yi. He pressed the call button, and the slightly feminine voice of the boss of Jiayang Pictures came through the receiver. "Master Lu." Lu Chen replied in a deep voice, "Hello, Boss Zhou. What can I do for you?" Even a clay figurine had some anger. When they first cooperated, Jiayang Pictures promised that they would be able to finish filming A Chinese Ghost Story smoothly. Other than the filming and production, they would be able to take care of everything else. Everyone had seen the result. Thinking of the half a day wasted and the emotional turmoil in the crew, how could Lu Chen not be angry? Through the microphone, Lu Chen seemed to be able to see the bitter smile on Zhou Yi's face at this moment. "Young Master Lu, you're treating me like an outsider. I already know what happened today. The problem is very big. Can we talk face to face?" Lu Chen thought for a moment and asked, "When?" "Zhou Yi, let's do it now. Is it convenient for you?" Lu Chen, "Sure." Zhou Yi gave him an address. It was not far from where Lu Chen was eating, so he brought Wan Shaoquan, Chen Wenxiang, and the others to the appointment. The place to meet was called Oaken Clubhouse. This private clubhouse was located in the bustling business district of Shenghuan. It was a place frequented by the upper class of Xiangjiang, and the membership fee was more than 1,000,000 yuan a year. Zhou Yi booked a private room in the clubhouse. He brought an assistant and Nie Mingzhu with him. When they met, Zhou Yi's first words were, "Master Lu, I'm really sorry this time." Lu Chen suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Because from Zhou Yi's tone, it seemed that he was planning to withdraw. Once Jiayang Pictures gave up on the collaboration, it meant that Lu Chen would have to rebuild the crew and even choose a new female lead. All his previous efforts would be in vain. Chapter 488. People who knew and understood Zhou Yi thought that he was a real businessman. Businessmen valued profits over friendship. A real businessman often had great courage in the face of rich interests and dared to challenge the rules. Now that trouble had just appeared, Zhou Yi actually wanted to retreat, which really surprised Lu Chen. In this cooperation between the two sides, Lu Chen has given up a large part of the benefits. He is very confident about the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story. This work, which is regarded as a classic in the dream world, will inevitably shine its due light. The 30 million production cost was very likely to bring several times or even 10 times the profit. Of course, Zhou Yi definitely did not know the origin of A Chinese Ghost Story, but it was impossible for him to be ignorant of Lu Chen's influence and appeal in the mainland. Otherwise, he would not have actively promoted the cooperation. So what made him give up? Lu Chen was prepared for the worst in his heart. He said calmly, "Mr. Zhou, you're exaggerating. Let's sit down and talk slowly." They all knew each other, so there was no need to introduce each other and greet each other politely. Everyone sat down together. Zhou Yi personally picked up the teapot and poured a cup of hot tea for Lu Qin. He sighed and said, "Child Lu, you must be suspecting that Jiayang Pictures or I have a grudge against Xingyi Hall, which is behind Honghua. But I can tell you frankly that I have never offended anyone from the Jiang family. If it's just the boss of Honghua, Jiang Qinghua, I'm not afraid. But his father, Jiang Tai, I don't even have the right to talk to him as an equal. It's not a problem with Jiayang Pictures?" Lu Chen was stunned. What was going on? Zhou Yi obviously understood what he was thinking and continued, "I've already asked someone to find out what's going on with Jiang Qinghua. I believe there should be accurate information in the next 2 days. And according to my guess, the boss of Jiayang Pictures hesitated for a moment, but he did not say anything." Lu Chen smiled faintly and said, "Mr. Zhou, if you have something to say, just say it. It doesn't matter even if your guess is wrong." Zhou Yi smiled and said, "I'm guessing that Honghua wants to take a stake in this movie. I heard that Jiang Qinghua recently has plans to set up his own entertainment company and enter the film industry. But in the current situation, it's not easy for him to find a suitable partner, so you chose my movie as your stepping stone?" Lu Chen immediately laughed. "I'm just a newcomer from the mainland. In his eyes, I'm a fat sheep, right?" Zhou Yi's expression was a little awkward, obviously agreeing with Lu Chen's words. "This is just my guess. The real situation still depends on the other party." Lu Chen pondered for a moment. He tapped his fingers on the table and asked, If Honghua really wants to invest and I agree, what are your plans, Boss Zhou?" Zhou Yi replied without hesitation, "Then I'll withdraw. I can't afford to offend the Jiang clan." His answer was very straightforward, directly admitting that he was afraid. Lu Chen understood what he meant. "What if I don't agree?" Zhou Yi's answer was still straightforward. "Jiayang Pictures is willing to continue the cooperation, but we can't directly confront the Jiang clan. If Jiang Tai asks, then I can only withdraw." Lu Chen understood. Although Zhou Yi said that he didn't dare to offend the Jiang clan, the premise was that the boss of the Jiang clan, Jiang Tai, was also involved in this matter. Otherwise, Jiayang Pictures would not give up the cooperation. But it was not realistic to count on Jiayang Pictures to deal with Honghua. Zhou Yi's behavior was typical of a businessman to seek benefits and avoid harm. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a little shameless. But he was blunt and had the demeanor of a real villain. Everything was laid out on the table for discussion. Lu Chen wasn't angry. He thought for a moment and said, "Then let's leave it at that for now. Boss Zhou, please find out more useful information about Honghua. If it involves any costs, our studio is willing to bear them." "You're too kind, too kind." Zhou Yi waved his hand and said, "Once there's news, I'll inform you immediately." Lu Chen nodded. Things could only be like this for the time being. The shooting had to continue tomorrow. He couldn't just stop farming when he heard Lala Goose cry. He didn't want to run back to the mainland with his tail between his legs. If he didn't have a brave and fearless heart, even if he had the wealth of a world, how could he climb to the real peak? Before leaving, Nia Mingzhu, who had been silent, poured a cup of tea for Lu Chen. She said to Lu Chen, "I like this script very much, and I like the role of Nia Shaoqian very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I hope we can continue to work together happily." Lu Chen didn't quite understand Nia Mingzhu's attitude, but he accepted her kindness. After leaving Oaken Club, Wan Shaoquan expressed his dissatisfaction with Zhou Yi in the car. "This person is too cunning and unreliable. Do we really want to continue working with him?" Lu Chen explained, "If we give up working with Jiayang Pictures now, things will become more troublesome. First, we have to figure out Honghua's real intentions, and then we'll make plans." It was good that Zhou Yi had made things clear. When the time came, Lu Chen would be justified in kicking them out. Most importantly, in the conversation just now, Lu Chen felt that Zhou Yi had a trump card. He wasn't afraid of the Jiang family as he had said, and it seemed more like he was testing Lu Chen's attitude. As a result, the next day, something happened at the Fane Temple film set in Lion Rock Studio. Someone had thrown 2 dead cats into the set, and they were unlucky black cats. The necks of the cats were broken. They must have been thrown in secretly in the early hours of the morning, Wang Yong said to Lu Chen, who had just arrived at the set. I asked Xiao Chen to take care of it. I didn't tell anyone else. This was purely a disgusting method. The other party didn't steal or rob, but deliberately did something to disgust people. It was useless to call the police. The Xinjiang police wouldn't take such a small matter seriously. Moreover, after calling the police, it would be easy for the paparazzi to take photos and put them on the media. It would only have a greater impact on the crew. Lu Chen listened to Qin Wenxiang's advice and asked him to secretly control the news and not spread it. Lu Chen was very glad that he had arranged for 2 more people to be stationed at the set last night. Otherwise, if there were loopholes in the management, it would be easy for the other party to take advantage of them, and they might cause even more damage. However, what he didn't expect was that before noon, the news of the dead cats being thrown on the set had spread among the crew. Everyone had a strange look on their faces, and many of the crew members were absent-minded. The shooting process was also not smooth. In the afternoon, someone proposed to quit the crew. Chapter 489. The composition of a regular film crew was quite complicated. In addition to the actors, there were also producers, production directors, producers, planners, art directors, cinematographers, and so on. In addition, there were stage managers, makeup artists, art designers, lighting artists, and prop masters. Together with the financial assistants, the number of people could easily exceed 100, and even a few hundred was common. The crew of The Chinese Ghost Story was relatively small. Because there were not many characters in the film, the number of actors was relatively small. However, the necessary people could not be missing. Apart from the dozen or so members of Lu Chen's studio, most of the crew members were sent by Jiayang Pictures. Some of them were temporarily hired by the latter and did not belong to Jiayang Pictures. This was very normal. Otherwise, with the scale and strength of Jiayang Pictures, it would be impossible to support so many people. Even large film companies would pay attention to the number of employees. In the film and television industry, there were specialized agencies to solve this problem. Once a film company needed people for a new project, whether it was actors, scriptwriters, cameramen, recording artists, or even directors, they could be hired through an agency. This saved money to a great extent. There were 5 people who suddenly proposed to quit the crew. They were all assistants and handymen in the logistics department. They were not important people, and the crew could still operate without them. However, this was undoubtedly a dangerous signal. The dead cat incident on the set had caused the hearts of the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story to become very unstable. The filming plan was facing a serious situation. But it was not over yet. In the afternoon, the car that the crew had parked in the parking lot of the film and television city had its tires punctured, and all 4 tires were punctured. Zhang Xiaofang had brought people to buy lunch boxes in this car yesterday and at noon. The intention of the saboteur was very obvious. Call the police. Lu Chen said to Qin Wenxiang, complain to the Film and Television City's Management Committee again. Lu Chen could still tolerate the dead cat being thrown at the set in the morning, but now he could not take it anymore. He knew very well that neither calling the police nor complaining would solve the problem. Even if the troublemakers were caught, the punishment would not be severe. They would be released after a few days in jail, and they could continue to cause damage. Moreover, it was still unknown whether they could find the culprit. This was not a criminal case. As long as Honghua's side continued to harass them, it would be enough to make the entire production team restless. They would not be able to focus on filming. The most disgusting thing about these gangs was that they could still achieve their goals without resorting to violent means of killing. In the face of such trouble, if the crew did not have strong enough connections, they would have no choice but to submit, pay protection fees, or share the profits to avoid the disaster. Lu Qin had also thought of spending money to avoid disaster, but the other party wanted a foot after taking an inch. Things definitely wouldn't end well. Calling the police and filing a complaint was to show that he would never bow down. Chen Wenqiang nodded. "I'll deal with it right away, but," he hesitated for a moment before saying, "but without direct evidence, we'd better not accuse Honghua. Even if you used your toes to think, everyone could figure out that this was done by Honghua." However, knowing was one thing, pointing it out to the police and the management of the film studio was another. Without evidence, the other party would definitely sue them for defamation. Nowadays, these gangs had learned from the lessons of their predecessors. When they started companies, factories, and industries, they would hire lawyers to act as amulets. They were very good at using legal means to achieve their goals. Honghua might even be waiting for the crew to file a complaint against them. Chen Wenqiang's explanation was an eye-opener for Lu Qin. He didn't know that the underworld nowadays could be played like this. However, at this point, he couldn't back down. Chen Wenqiang had just taken out his phone to call the police when his phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and said a few words. His expression suddenly changed. The other party hung up very quickly. "What's wrong?" Lu Qin keenly sensed that something was wrong. He immediately asked, "Did something happen again?" Chen Wenqiang nodded with a bitter smile and replied, "Lu Jiahui is not acting anymore. He quit the crew." Lu Jiahui was the actor who played the role of Grandma Tree Spirit. He was a local of Xiangjiang and had played countless roles in the past few decades. He was quite famous for playing villains. Lu Qin had seen him many times when he watched Xiangjiang movies. The cast of A Chinese Ghost Story could be said to be weak. Lu Jiahui was also considered a small star. Since Lu Jiahui didn't have any scenes in the past 2 days, he wasn't on the set. However, it was obvious that he knew what had happened here. That was why he took the initiative to quit. This kind of veteran actor was usually very trustworthy. If his reputation was ruined in this industry, then no crew would be willing to hire him. It was equivalent to destroying his own rice bowl. If it wasn't for the great pressure, Lu Jiahui definitely wouldn't break the contract like this. Motherf ***. The more Chen Wenqiang thought about it, the angrier he got. He couldn't help but curse. This original actor was really a grandma. Lu Qin was almost amused by Chen Wenqiang's curse. Wasn't Lu Jiahui hired by Jiayang? This role was fought over by Jiayang Pictures during the negotiation. Now that Lu Jiahui broke the contract, it was also a slap in the face to Jiayang Pictures. How could Jiayang remain indifferent? Chen Wenqiang smiled bitterly. It was Jiayang's people who informed me. Then there was no turning back. Lu Qin also had the urge to curse. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a deep voice, "Uncle Chang, don't call the police. Please ask Uncle Ma to come over." Chen Wenqiang was stunned. He immediately understood what Lu Qin meant. Lu Jiahui ran away. If the other more important supporting actor, Ma Rongjin, also ran away, then the crew would be paralyzed. It would be a complete mess. Compared to Lu Jiahui, who was doing well in the industry, Ma Rongjin, who had always been a flop, was probably even weaker. Therefore, at this time, Lu Qin couldn't panic. He had to find a way to stabilize the crew's morale. The first step was to ensure that an important role like Ma Rongjin wouldn't go wrong. Ma Rongjin soon arrived. Ma Rongjin was also a supporting actor, and he also didn't have any scenes to shoot. Ma Rongjin was different from Lu Jiahui, who disappeared after the opening ceremony. He had been with the crew the whole time and even helped with some chores. Maybe because he had lost it before, Ma Rongjin knew how to cherish this opportunity. He didn't brag, but used his actions to show his efforts. "Young Master Lu, you wanted to see me?" Lu Chen asked directly. "Uncle Ma, did anyone ask you to leave the crew?" Chapter 490. Although Ma Rongjin was in dire straits now, he had been in the entertainment circle for many years and was experienced. Therefore, he understood what was going on when he heard Lu Chen's words. "No," he replied firmly, "even if there is, I will never leave the cast unless young Master Lu asks me to." Lu Chen and Chen Wenxiang looked at each other and saw a trace of relief in each other's eyes. If Ma Rongjin also ran away, it would be really troublesome. Lu Chen was relieved and said with a smile, "That's good. Don't worry, I definitely won't let you go. Let's work hard together and make this movie a good one." The character of this veteran actor was undoubtedly trustworthy. Ma Rongjin asked with concern, "Master Lu, does Lu Jiahui not want to make the movie?" Lu Chen and Chen Wenxiang were both stunned. The latter asked in surprise, "Brother Rongjin, how did you know?" This man, Ma Rongjin's eyes flashed a touch of disdain and said, "He is not only cunning, but also extremely afraid of death. If someone casually threatens him, he will definitely shrink back. There is nothing strange about it." It could be seen that Ma Rongjin despised Lu Jiahui very much. They probably had some grievances in the past. Lu Chen didn't care about their gossip. He cared about Ma Rongjin himself. "Uncle Ma, aren't you afraid that Xingyi Hall is behind Honghua?" Ma Rongjin smiled and said, "What am I afraid of? My life is worthless now. If Xingyi Hall makes trouble for me, then I will risk my life to fight with them. The current Hong Kong is not the Hong Kong of decades ago. The Jiang family can't cover the sky in Hong Kong." Ma Rongjin said frankly, "If Xingyi Hall makes trouble for me in the past, maybe I will shrink back like Lu Jiahui. But now I'm really not afraid of anything. My wife and children have long run away, and I am the only one left at home. If they are not afraid of causing public anger, then they can do whatever they want. If Jiang Qinghua dares to ruin my life, I will dare to lie in front of his father's door with my mother. Let's see who will lose face." Lu Chen was a little speechless, but he was finally relieved about Ma Rongjin. "Still, you have to pay attention to your safety. Be careful of their dirty tricks." Ma Rongjin smiled. "Young Master Lu, I don't think they will chase me away. I don't have a good reputation in the industry. Box office poison." Lu Chen suddenly remembered Ma Rongjin's nickname and laughed involuntarily. Ma Rongjin sighed and said, "Actually, when encountering such a situation, the best solution is to find a big shot. Unfortunately, I don't have any face now. I'm sorry that I can't help you." "You can't say that." Lu Chen shook his head and said, "Uncle Ma, you're helping me by insisting on staying in the crew." Although the crew was facing constant troubles, the filming work could not be interrupted because of this, otherwise the loss would be great. Lu Chen did not hold back any of those who chose to quit the cast. Anyone who wanted to leave could leave. Nothing that was forced would not be sweet. As for Lu Jiahui, he was invited by Jiayang Pictures. Naturally, Jiayang Pictures would give an explanation. That night, Zhou Yi, the boss of Jiayang Pictures, called Lu Chen again. Through a middleman, Honghua gave a settlement condition. "Buying shares is a must," Zhou Yi said over the phone. His voice sounded very tired and weak. "As for how much shares, we need to sit down and discuss it. The middleman's bottom line is no less than 35%. Honghua will set up a new film company to participate in the shooting and distribution of the new film as the main shareholder. They wanted at least 35% of the film shares. The last bit of hope in Lu Chen's heart was gone. These gangs and societies were so greedy that giving them even 1% wasn't a good idea. But he still listened to Zhou Yi patiently. In addition, Honghua suggested that they choose someone to be the director and producer. The male and female leads can remain the same. Well, Lu Chen could not listen to it anymore. The most important members of a film crew would always be the director and producer. Sometimes the two might be one, but most of the time, they jointly controlled the fate of the film. Honghua not only wanted to buy shares, but also wanted to take away the director and producer. It was equivalent to controlling the life and death of a Chinese ghost story in their own hands. How could Lu Chen agree? Boss Zhou, you don't have to say any more. I will not agree to any of their conditions. If they insist on making trouble, then I can only accompany them to the end. Lu Chen's answer was resolute, with unshakable determination and confidence. That was never to bow down. Zhou Yi was not surprised. If it were him, he would rather break up the business than agree to such bad conditions, that was equivalent to directly kneeling on the ground. After thinking for a moment, he still said his guess. Young Master Lu, I think their ultimate goal is not to ask for shares, but to drive you away from Xiangjiang. Zhou Yi put himself in Honghua's shoes. If he was interested in the movie, A Chinese Ghost Story, and wanted to take it by force, the time to choose to make trouble was not now. The best time was when the filming was halfway through. At that time, Lu Chen had invested a large amount of money. If he withdrew, the loss would be great, and he might give in. Now that he had just started, he wanted to buy shares and the director and producer. Did he really think others were idiots? Therefore, Zhou Yi suspected that Honghua's purpose was to drive Lu Chen away. Lu Chen felt that Zhou Yi's guess was very reasonable, but he was very puzzled. What good will it do for Honghua if I leave? Lu Chen came to Xiangjiang to shoot a movie, so there should be no conflict with Honghua, who was currently in the food and beverage business. Moreover, he had previously ordered box lunches from the latter to do business. Zhou Yi said, I don't know, but I know that Jiang Qinghua is a very smart person. He doesn't do business that loses money, and he won't waste time and energy on things that harm others without benefiting himself. So as to what the truth is, I can only find a way to find out. Be careful here. After ending the call with Zhou Yi, Lu Chen thought for a moment and dialed Wang Yong's cell phone. After so many things had happened, although the crew had already called the police and complained to the management of the film city, the safety of the crew still had to be maintained by themselves. Therefore, he asked Wang Yong to personally stay on the set to look after the equipment at night. After giving a few serious instructions to Wang Yong, Lu Chen went to bed to rest. The next morning, he was woken up from his sleep by the urgent ringing of the phone. Opening his eyes, Lu Chen immediately turned over and grabbed the landline on the bedside table. He put the phone to his ear. Hello. Wang Yong's excited voice came from the phone. Young Master Lu, we caught the two guys who caused trouble. What? Lu Chen was suddenly completely awake. Chapter 491. In the early morning of yesterday, someone threw the dead cat into the Fein Temple set, which made Wang Yong angry. Lu Chen did not blame the people in charge of guarding the set, because the set was so big, and without any monitoring equipment, the people who stayed behind could only guard the important equipment, and could not prevent this kind of malicious behavior. But Wang Yong felt ashamed. Because the people guarding the set were several members of the Lu family squad, who were also his subordinates, he felt that he was responsible for such a thing happened. Wang Yong was not an ordinary person. He had been in the army for many years, and had already honed an extraordinary skill, and also mastered special military skills, but after retiring from the army, there had been no place for him to use them. Now that such a situation had happened, Won Young certainly could not tolerate a few people from the gangs, who unscrupulously caused trouble under his eyes, so last night he personally led a team to guard the set. And after discussing with Lu Qin, he also bought a set of simple local monitoring equipment and set it up. Once this former elite in the army became serious, a few petty thieves were completely not enough. They were also caught in the early morning of this day, and they were caught red-handed. Just two little yellow-haired boys. Won Young said proudly, "I used a little means to deal with them, and they all confessed. They are the henchmen of Honghua, usually responsible for delivering lunch boxes, and so on. They sent us 2 dead dogs and a bucket of dog blood, trying to pollute our set. Not only did they throw the dead cat away, but they also sprinkled dog blood." Lu Chen finally saw the shamelessness and filth of this kind of gang. He asked, "Did they get hurt?" Xiangjiang was a place of law, and it was the Anglo-American legal system, so there were a lot of lawyers, and trivial matters often had to be solved in court. Won Young did not call the police immediately after catching the troublemakers, but first vented his anger. If they really got hurt, then things would be very troublesome. At that time, Honghua would definitely use this as a pretext, and the crew would become unreasonable. Won Young smiled and said, "Don't worry about my methods. Even if I send these 2 guys to the hospital for an MRI scan, they definitely won't be able to detect any injuries. Originally, I had prepared more than 10 methods, but in the end, before I even finished 2 of them, they already confessed everything with snot and tears on their faces." Lu Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry because it sounded like Won Young wasn't satisfied. He said, "You've done a good job. I'll come over now and call the police when I arrive." If he was present when the police arrived, he should be able to put some pressure on them. After thinking about it, Lu Chen gave Zhou Yi a call. In the end, it was Zhou Yi's assistant who picked up the phone, saying that the boss was still resting. Lu Chen did not mind and informed the other party about the situation at the set. Then, he hurriedly washed up and contacted Chen Wenxiang to rush to Lion Rock together. Chen Wenxiang was very happy when he found out that the culprit had been caught red-handed. He said that he had finally gotten his revenge. He believed that this time, Honghua's side would have to suffer a little in the lawsuit and reduce the pressure on the production team. However, to the 2 of them's surprise, Won Young made a call halfway through the car. Just a few minutes ago, a group of people wearing Honghua's restaurant uniforms appeared at Fane Temple. They blocked the entrance of the set and clamored for the crew to release the culprit. "How arrogant!" Lu Chen replied without hesitation, "Call the police immediately and guard the set. Don't let them break in. Uncle Chang and I will be there in 10 minutes. Won Young said, "Don't worry, the people here are all good. Unless they use their weapons, I can guarantee that they won't be able to break in even if there are twice as many of them. Then it's all up to you." After ending the call with Won Young, Lu Chen said to Chen Wenxiang, "Uncle Chang, inform the management of the studio." To be honest, Lu Chen was very dissatisfied with the management of Lion Rock Studio. It was impossible for them to be completely unaware of such a problem that the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story had encountered, but they pretended to be deaf and dumb. Lu Chen would never believe that there was no internal collusion between Honghua and the management of the studio. It was nothing more than taking advantage of the fact that he was an outsider. But even though he was angry, Lu Chen still had to do what he had to do. No matter what the management's reaction was, he had to clearly express his attitude. The Mercedes-Benz MPV carrying the 2 of them sped up. Zhang Xiaofang displayed his driving skills without saying a word. The distance that would normally have taken 10 minutes to complete took only 5 minutes to reach the destination. After parking the car in the parking lot, the 3 of them hurried to the set. From afar, they saw a group of people surrounding the gate of Fane Temple, confronting Won Young and several crew members. The police had not arrived yet, and the people from the studio were nowhere to be seen. However, there were a few paparazzi sneaking around with cameras in their hands. They were probably hired by Honghua. There were about 20 or 30 people surrounding the set. They were all very young and wore blue uniforms with the Honghua restaurant logo printed on them. They looked very arrogant. Release them immediately, or don't blame us for being rude. Brothers, the mainlanders have detained our brothers. Can we agree? Release them. Apologize. Pay up. What bullsh** T crew is this? You snatched our jobs and captured our people. I'll fight you today. Go back to the mainland. Most of these people from Honghua were barehanded, but there were also a few who were holding baseball bats. As early as the 70s and 80s, when the gangs in Xinjiang were at their strongest, the fights between the major triad organizations were extremely fierce, and people were often killed. At that time, machetes and daggers were a necessity for everyone. Pistols and even rifles had appeared in gang fights. At that time, ordinary people in Xinjiang felt insecure. They were afraid that they would be stabbed or eaten by a stray bullet while walking on the street. Some gang members were simply unreasonable and dared to kill people over trivial matters. This kind of social reality was also reflected in Xinjiang's movies and TV series. Gangster movies were popular at that time, and the protagonists in the movies were often members of gangs. The deliberate whitewashing and flattering of the protagonists affected countless young people in Xinjiang. After several severe attacks, these violent gangs had already disappeared. Later on, the rising gangs would put on a layer of legal armor and would no longer fight and kill at every turn. Moreover, the Xinjiang government had extremely strict control over firearms and controlled knives. Once violated, they would be severely punished. No one dared to openly go on the streets. But a dog can't stop eating **T. As the most direct and effective method, the factor of violence had long been deeply ingrained in the bones of the gang members. Many times, they would still flaunt their strength. Of course, controlled knives and firearms were definitely not allowed to be used. If they were used, it would be a taboo. Therefore, the hard and easy-to-use baseball bats became the best weapon for these people. It was not against the law to hold a baseball bat, but when they hit people, they were still fierce and full of deterrence. When Lu Qin appeared on the set with Qin Wenxiang and Zhang Xiaofang, someone immediately noticed him. Chapter 492. That's him. He's the celebrity boss from the mainland. Stop him, don't let him run away. Let our brothers come out. Hurry up. Several of Honghua's men recognized Lu Qin at the first moment. As if they had found a treasure, they quickly surrounded Lu Qin while shouting and shouting. Each of them had an ominous glint in their eyes. One of them was a young man with a flat-top haircut. There was a dark blue tattoo on his neck. He held a wooden baseball bat in his hand. He rushed to Lu Qin at the fastest speed. As he rushed, he cursed, "Bastard, how dare you detain my brother? Go to hell." At the same time, he raised the baseball bat in his hand high. The bat was shiny and reflective in the morning sun, which was very deterrent. Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhang Xiaofang immediately rushed to protect Lu Qin. Lu Qin reached out to stop him and said in a deep voice, "You protect Uncle Chang. I'll deal with him." While speaking, Lu Qin did not stop and rushed to the other side without showing any weakness. The young man with a flat-top haircut was very surprised. In his impression, a delicate and noble star artist like Lu Qin is the most timid in the face of violence and intimidation. He believes that as long as he puts on a good posture, he can definitely scare Lu Qin to the point of wetting his pants. Then his goal would be achieved. However, what the young man with a flat-top haircut never expected was that in the face of him and the baseball bat in his hand, not only did Lu Qin not show the slightest fear, but he also put on a posture to fight. This is not right. The young man with a flat-top haircut didn't really want to hit Lu Qin, because if he really hurt someone, especially a celebrity from the mainland, the consequences would be absolutely serious. Even his boss might not be able to protect him. The Hong Kong government's crackdown on violence was very strict, not to mention that the victim was a celebrity. However, if the young man with a flat-top haircut chose to retreat at this time, he would lose his face. With so many brothers watching, he would become a joke in the martial arts world if it was spread out. As a member of a club, his head could be chopped off and his blood could flow, but he could not afford to lose face. At this moment, several thoughts flashed through the young man's mind. In the end, the violent emotions hidden deep in his heart prevailed. He growled and swung the baseball bat at Lu Chen's left shoulder. Otherwise, it would be no problem to smash someone's head to smack them to death. Moreover, he still reserved some strength. As long as he could successfully scare Lu Chen, it would be enough to let Lu Chen suffer a little. This was also specially instructed by the people above. The young man with the crew cut could be considered a smart person, but unfortunately, he was facing Lu Chen. When he saw the other party brandishing his weapon, Lu Chen suddenly sped up. His body rushed forward like an arrow shot from a bow, like a ferocious beast pouncing on its prey. In the blink of an eye, he collided with the young man with the crew cut. At the moment of collision, Lu Chen turned his body sideways and rammed the back of his shoulder into his opponent's chest. Bang! Accompanied by a dull, low sound, the young man with the crew cut flew out involuntarily, as if he had been hit head-on by a raging bull. He collided with a few of his companions behind him, and instantly became a gourd rolling on the ground. Ah! Screams, cries of pain, and the sound of bodies colliding intertwined, causing the other people of Honghua to be stunned. What was going on? The result of the collision was too unexpected, and they felt that their common sense had been subverted. Many of these street gangsters chased after celebrities, but they never thought that the awe-inspiring actors and actresses in the movies and television had real skills. For people like them, if they had a machete in hand, it would not be a problem for them to chop down 18 or 19 kings and queens. The young man with the crew cut was a small leader of Honghua, and he was a very combative member of the club. Although he did not hold a machete in his hand, his baseball bat was not to be trifled with. However, in just one round, the young man with the crew cut was KO'd by Lu Chen, and even the others were unlucky. This did not make sense. Don't even think about escaping. While everyone was still in a daze, Wang Yong, who was stationed at the entrance of the film set, rushed out with a group of crew members. They didn't have many people, and there were only a mere 8 of them including Wang Yong. But when faced with an opponent that was 3 to 4 times their number, they were like a group of ferocious tigers that had descended the mountain and brazenly slaughtered their way into a pack of wolves. Last night, most of the Lu family squad that Lu Chen had arranged to stay at the film set finally revealed their sharp fangs. All the members of the Lu family squad were retired military personnel, and they were good at grappling and close combat. Furthermore, they had undergone strict training, and were on a completely different level from Honghua's gangsters. Their previous forbearance was only to wait for Lu Chen's arrival. Now that Lu Chen had personally made a move, of course Wang Yong would not just stand by and watch. He immediately commanded the Lu family squad to move out. The battle, from the very beginning, showed a one-sided trend. Although Honghua's gangsters had the advantage in numbers, in terms of organization, action, and combat effectiveness, they could not be compared to the former at all. Therefore, in an instant, they threw away their helmets and abandoned their armor. The Lu family squad led by Wang Yong captured a gangster and used the plastic buckles that they carried with them to tie up his hands. There were also gangsters who tried to resist, but the result of resistance was even worse. They were punched heavily in the stomach or thrown to the ground, suffering greatly. This was the result of the Lu family squad deliberately controlling their strength. Otherwise, if they were to fight to the death, half of them would be completely lying on the ground within half a minute, never to get up again. The few who dared to resist were all defeated. Seeing their companions being taken care of one by one, the others were scared out of their wits. They threw down the sticks in their hands and ran away like rats. It was really embarrassing to the extreme. At this moment, the paparazzi who were squatting not far away were extremely excited. They raised their respective long and short cameras and took pictures of the scene, for fear of missing a wonderful scene. Of course, Lu Chen saw it, but he had no intention of interfering. Today's counterattack was completely justified, and he wasn't afraid even if it was brought to court. What he needed was a hearty victory like this to establish his prestige and reputation. Otherwise, he would only be tired of dealing with Honghua's endless sinister tactics and be at a complete disadvantage. When it was time to make a move, Lu Chen would rather go back to the mainland if he had to be cautious and indecisive in every matter. Woo-woo-woo, the heart-palpitating sound of police sirens came from afar, telling everyone that the police had arrived. Interestingly, the gangsters who were put on the ground breathed a sigh of relief. Since the police were here, they were not in any danger. In fact, it was not only the police who showed up, but also the people from the film city's management organization. The ruins of Fane Temple, located in a remote corner of Lion Rock Hill, had never been as lively as it was now. While Chen Wenxiang was negotiating with the police and the management of Film City, Lu Chen made a second call to Zhou Yi. Chapter 493. This time, it was Zhou Yi who answered the phone. He said in a deep voice, "Young Master Lu, I'm on my way. I'll be there in a few minutes at most." Zhou Yi was a very shrewd businessman, and in many cases, shrewdness could also be interpreted as cunning. When it came to dealing with Honghua, Zhou Yi was very cunning and was unwilling to share the pressure for Lu Chen. But now, his attitude was impeccable. As a well-known businessman in Xiangjiang, Zhou Yi's strength and status could not be compared with the top tycoons. He was not an ordinary rich man, and he had a considerable status. His coming to the set in person was undoubtedly another sign of support for Lu Chen. Lu Chen was too lazy to guess what Zhou Yi was thinking. He first briefly described what had just happened on the phone, and finally said to Zhou Yi straightforwardly, "Boss Zhou, I'm going to hold a media conference immediately to clarify the truth of the matter to the media and the public, and denounce Honghua's bad behavior at the same time. I want to know, how many influential media can you help me invite now?" Lu Chen emphasized the word influential. He believed that Zhou Yi understood what he meant. Of course, Zhou Yi understood that Lu Chen was going to fight with Honghua. And if Zhou Yi came forward to invite important media reporters, it meant that he was firmly tied to Lu Chen's chariot. It was impossible for him to waver like before, and he had to clearly support Lu Chen. Young people nowadays were really amazing. Zhou Yi was silent and also thinking. However, Lu Chen did not let him delay, and said very bluntly, "Boss Zhou, if you can't do it, then you don't have to come." This was Lu Chen's last ultimatum. If he wanted to continue to cooperate, then he had to show a cooperative attitude. Otherwise, everyone would break up. Zhou Yi sighed and said, "Give me half an hour." Of course, he did not want to directly go against the Jiang family. A moment of pleasure would not help his business at all, and it would cause unnecessary trouble instead. Zhou Yi did not like trouble. What he liked was to earn money easily and quickly. However, in the current Xiangjiang, it was already very difficult to make money. The competition in the industry was extremely fierce. Even 1% of the profit might require 100% of the effort, and even a little bit of effort would cause one to lose everything. That was why Zhou Yi had acquired Jiayang Pictures to invest in multiple areas. He did not want to put all his eggs in one basket. Zhou Yi was also very optimistic about Lu Chen's movie project. Based on his serious understanding of Lu Chen, he realized that this young man, who had debuted in the country less than 2 years ago, had already created many miracles. Those who followed Lu Qin, trusted Lu Qin, and supported Lu Qin had all received generous rewards. Because of this understanding, when faced with a choice, Zhou Yi placed all his chips on Lu Qin. Of course, he also had a trump card. A smile finally appeared on Lu Qin's face, and his tone became gentle. An hour is fine. The press conference is scheduled to be held at 9:30. I have prepared the materials here. After making up his mind, Zhou Yi immediately showed the decisiveness that a real businessman should have. Okay. The matter of holding the press conference was officially settled. As soon as Lu Qin ended the call with Zhou Yi, Chen Wenxiang came to him with a policeman. This is our boss, Mr. Lu Qin. Chen Wenxiang introduced, this is Sergeant Fang from the Kowloon Tang police station. Hello, Sergeant Fang. Lu Qin immediately took the initiative to extend his hand to him. Thank you for your hard work. Sergeant Fang was a tall and thin middle-aged man. He shook hands with Lu Qin and said, Hello, Mr. Lu Qin. The Lion Rock Film and Television City is within the jurisdiction of our police station. It is our duty to protect the safety of the filming crew. It's a pity that such a thing happened. We will increase the intensity of our patrols in the future. Lu Qin said with a smile, Thank you. Sergeant Fang nodded. His eyes swept over Wan Yong and the other members of the Lu family squad, and he said casually, The people in your crew are very good at martial arts. It was more than good. Of course, Sergeant Fang was very clear about the background of the mastermind of the disturbance, Hong Hua. He had even heard rumors that Hong Hua was dealing with a crew from the mainland, so he had been mentally prepared for what would happen today. But what he didn't expect was that Hong Hua, who came to make trouble, actually suffered such a big loss. More than 20 people were subdued on the spot, and they were so fast that he could only clean up the mess when he arrived with his team. This made Sergeant Fang vigilant. In the 70s and 80s, there was a special force in Hong Kong called the Big Circle Gang. Its members were all from the mainland, and their methods were particularly cruel. Later, they were the most severely suppressed. When Sergeant Fang was a child, he had a deep impression of the Big Circle Gang. The powerful members of the Lu family squad made him have some subtle associations. Lu Qin said with a smile, They are martial arts masters in charge of staying on the set. They are all retired soldiers. Fortunately, they are. Lu Qin's words were meaningful. Hearing the word soldier, Sergeant Fang's pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression instantly froze. The soldiers of the Republic had a special deterrent power to the people of Hong Kong. After Hong Kong returned to the mainland, there had always been a garrison in Hong Kong. Later, when the Hong Kong government took action to crack down on the evil forces, the garrison participated in it, and their outstanding performance made the whole world look at them. But Sergeant Fang reacted very quickly, and immediately said with a smile, No wonder, no wonder. But we have to bring these troublemakers back to the police station for interrogation. Please believe that the police will definitely deal with them impartially. Imperceptibly, he was a little more polite to Lu Qin. Thank you, Sergeant Fang. Lu Qin shook hands with him again. Then I'll leave it to the police to deal with. Because the incident was a little big, the Kowloon Tong police station sent a number of police cars, including a riot police car. There were more than 20 police officers, so when they brought the troublemakers back, it was quite a big scene. Probably because the news had spread, there were more and more reporters around the set. Many paparazzi came out of nowhere and kept taking pictures of the police and the arrested Hong Chinese. Some reporters even went straight to Lu Qin. Mr. Lu Qin, I'm a reporter from the Kowloon Express. Can you tell me what exactly happened? Lu Qin stopped Zhang Xiaofeng, who was about to stop the reporters, and said, Our crew will hold a media conference here at 9:30. All reporters are welcome to come and interview. After saying that, he ignored the reporters who were trying to continue asking questions and turned around to return to the set. Lu Chen, Mr. Lu Chen. The other reporters who had just surrounded them could only see Lu Chen's back as he left. Chapter 494. At 9:30 a.m. on November 30th, the temporary media conference of the cast of A Chinese Ghost Story was held at the former site of the Fain Temple, which was the movie set. The media conference was held by Lu Chen Studio and Jiayang Pictures. In addition, the Lion Rock Film City administration also sent a representative to the scene. The media invited to the scene included ATV, Ming Pao, Hong Kong Daily, Polo Daily, Entertainment News, Kowloon radio station. Except for a portion of the reporters who had rushed over after receiving the news, most of the others were invited by Zhou Yi using his connections. Otherwise, the major media outlets would not be interested in reporting on the incident itself. Zhou Yi used this opportunity to show off his strength. The layout of the media conference was very simple. There were two long tables put together and covered with a cloth as a podium. The chairs that the reporters sat on were temporarily borrowed from the management of the film city, so it looked quite simple. However, there was a projection screen and projectors set up behind the podium, which gave people a very different feeling. When it was time, there were about 30 media outlets at the scene, with 40 to 50 reporters and photographers. The atmosphere at the scene was quite good, and it was not chaotic. Lu Chen and Zhou Yi were the first to take their seats, followed by Wan Shaoquan, Chen Wenxiang, and then the representative of the Film City administration. Finally, a middle-aged woman with gold-rimmed glasses came out and sat on the outermost seat. After Chen Wenxiang sat down, he turned to ask Lu Chen, "Mr. Lu, shall we begin?" Lu Chen nodded seriously. "Okay." Chen Wenxiang coughed. He sat up straight and said into the microphone, "Welcome, friends from the media, to the media conference of the cast of A Chinese Ghost Story. Today, I have invited everyone here mainly to explain the bad things that have happened to our crew in the past few days." Chen Wenxiang had been in the industry for decades and was a true veteran. Although being a spokesman for the crew was not his job, he still did it well. His train of thought was very clear, and he told the ins and outs of the whole incident in detail. In the end, he said indignantly, "Xiangjiang is a legal society, but who would have thought that our crew would encounter such an encounter?" Honghua's bad behavior not only seriously affected the mood of the crew members, but also caused our shooting plan to be interrupted, causing great losses. So, here, we sincerely ask our friends in the media to uphold justice. As soon as Chen Wenxiang finished speaking, the reporters looked at each other. Many of the reporters present were not very clear about what had happened when they were sent over. They only knew that the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story had a conflict with someone. Only now did they have a basic understanding. However, this kind of thing did not seem to have much hype value, unless the production crew of A Chinese Ghost Story wanted to hype it up. They thought that he had understood and was prepared to give him some face and socialize casually. However, the reporters who had witnessed the conflict between the two sides had a lot of questions. Immediately, someone raised his hand and stood up, asking loudly, "Mr. Lu Chen, did you hire a security guard to protect the crew, so that the situation could be settled quickly?" Chen Wenxiang moved the microphone in front of Lu Chen. Lu Chen replied calmly, "The people who subdued the troublemakers weren't the security guards I hired. They were members of the film crew, and I brought them from the mainland." Lu family class. This term was quite fresh, and many reporters were curious. A reporter asked, "Can you introduce the Lu family class in detail?" He had seen the power of the members of the Lu family class with his own eyes. Ordinary martial artists did not have such high combat power. Lu Chen smiled faintly and said, "The Lu family class is a martial arts class that I personally organized and trained. At present, there are a total of 12 members and a head coach. They are responsible for filming the action scenes and stunts involved in the film and TV series. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Liu Chen officially pushed out the Liu family class. Although the Liu family class was still unknown and did not have any works, Liu Chen believed that in a few years, everyone in the Chinese circle would know this name. In the face of the reporters' questions, Liu Chen's answers were always calm and composed. Even if the other party's questions were a little over the top, he would easily avoid the trap, leaving no loopholes for the other party to exploit. If that was all, it would definitely not be enough to form a public opinion attack. Fortunately, Liu Chen had prepared for it. After answering a reporter's question, Liu Chen said seriously, "In fact, as far as this matter itself is concerned, although our crew suffered a certain loss, I believe that with the police handling it, they will definitely be able to seek justice for us. There is no need to mobilize so many people to invite you here." First, he flattered the police a little, and then Liu Chen's words suddenly changed. Was it not to seek justice for himself through the media? The reporters present were stunned. They felt that what Liu Chen said was too hypocritical. If it was not that, then what was it? Liu Chen saw their looks in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He said calmly, "First, please watch a video. It was shot by the staff who stayed behind in our crew through the surveillance this morning. The screen and projector that were set up at the back were finally put to use. Under the control of the crew, the surveillance footage from this morning was quickly displayed in front of everyone's eyes." When the video was taken, it was already dawn. Coupled with the fact that the surveillance equipment was more advanced, the footage was very clear. Everyone could see two people sneaking around the set from outside. They were each holding a plastic bucket and a long plastic bag in their hands. From further away, they could vaguely see that someone was responsible for keeping watch. The truth was soon revealed. One of them opened the bag, picked up a dog corpse inside, and was about to throw it over the wall. However, at that moment, a few of the crew members rushed out and caught the two of them on the spot. The video froze there. Liu Chen turned around and said in a heavy tone, "What really angered me was not the bad behavior of Honghua towards our crew, but the fact that they didn't hesitate to kill small animals to achieve their own goals." As soon as he finished speaking, the scene on the screen instantly changed. "Ah!" There was a sudden scream from the scene. A few female reporters even closed their eyes, as they couldn't bear to watch. What was displayed on the screen was a photo of a dead dog. The photo was very well taken, and it clearly captured the tragic state of the dog. Its body was covered in blood, and the dog's eyes were wide open with its tongue sticking out. There was a bloody hole on its neck that was pierced by a sharp blade. The zoomed-in close-up was very visually impactful. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.